Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright. You got a lot going on over here, Nick. A lot of numbers, a lot of stats.
Got a lot
of
to do. A lot to do, a lot going on.
We only have 3 hours to do it. Do you feel like that's enough time for you to get it all in today?
I don't know how people do 30-minute sports television shows, Chris Carter. I have no idea. I feel like 3 hours and like, damn, there's stuff left.
Wasn't this originally supposed to be a 3.5-hour show?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
You guys look nice.
Thank you very much. I don't know what's on 3.5 hours.
When in doubt.
Let's not give anybody any ideas. Every major show starts on a half hour, Jenna. Okay. Don't you know that?
And take a sip of coffee.
You're right, Jenna.
All right. Well, let us start a 3-hour show of a lot of numbers, a lot of stats, a lot of sports.
Nick's hot takes. They said we got to make it.
We got to cut that down,
Cut that down big time. Apparently, if you put something out into the ether long enough, it will definitely happen. How long have we been waiting for Cavs players not named LeBron to show up? Last night in Game 1 against the Raptors, they finally showed up, helping Cleveland win in overtime. This was a great game, 113 to 112. LeBron James had a quiet triple-double. 4 of his teammates scored in double digits. Yay for low bars. Toronto, following along its recent script, losing their 7th straight playoff game to Cleveland. Boy, they just really, LeBron's got their number. Here's LeBron on the win.
We knew we were going to get their best shot today. You know, they knew we didn't have much rest. They knew we didn't have much preparation. You know, they kind of been waiting around for us. And, you know, we just wanted to come in with the best game plan that we could in a short time. You know, execute offensively. You know, shots weren't going in. Like I said, for me personally, I was, you know, at probably one of my worst games of the season. And just try to, you know, make things happen, you know, at the right time.
We had many opportunities to close this game out. You know, like you said, we couldn't buy a bucket. You know, we got some great looks. We had a lot of shots point blank at the rim that were in and out. Freddie got 2 great looks. You know, we can name countless of things, but you know, it should never came down to depend on none of those. You know, but it happens. Now we understand what we gotta do next game.
So this was one of those games where did the Cavs win or did the Raptors lose? And I think you can make a fair point for either one of them. How should both of these teams, CC, feel after last night's game?
You can absolutely. But from a feeling standpoint, Toronto, they have to feel horrible. Now, you talking about getting Cleveland. We know the history there. Going into this game, had lost 6 straight in the playoffs in a humiliating fashion. At the end of the season, where Toronto was playing the best basketball that we've seen this play over this stretch, this tenure with this team, they got smashed by the Cavs. In 2 games that meant everything to Toronto, didn't mean anything to Cleveland, they got smashed. Cleveland just came through the most difficult series that we've seen, them not going against some type of championship caliber team and struggling with the Pacers in 7 games, no rest. They put it in the game plan. That's a 24-hour game plan, all right? Ty Lue, they were watching film yesterday. He decided, you know something, the team was locked in. He saw it in their eyes after an hour of watching film. That's all they did. They had a walk-through shoot-around. That's all they did. So for me, what I saw was, because what I thought the Cavs was lacking was, forget continuity, but they missed training camp. After they went on the great stretch of basketball early, guys got injured. Guys got traded. They went through a lot of turmoil. They need these games. They needed that 7-game series with the Pacers to be able to come together and the other guys start to play. So from Toronto's standpoint, this to me is one of the biggest losses in the franchise history. Home court advantage, everything, rest. I mean, you got the matchups, and you still can't get past the Cavs when LeBron doesn't play great. You can't forget that part.
Right. LeBron said it was one of his worst games, maybe my worst game of the year. And you lose. You have a double-digit early lead, and you lose. You're rested. They're exhausted. You have home court. They don't. You're the healthiest team in the playoffs. And you miss 11 straight shots to finish the game. In the final 4 minutes of the game, LeBron makes 2 baskets. Your team makes 0. This is, you mentioned.
They missed at least 10 at the rim.
CC, in the 4th quarter, how about 13? They were 3 of 16 inside 5 feet. That's the length of this desk. Like, this was one of those losses you mentioned in the regular season where the Raptors playing great, Cavs weren't, but the Cavs won. I talked about that was a worst-case scenario loss for the Raptors because that was a game they had a huge halftime lead. The Raptors were feeling great, and all of a sudden, LeBron and the Cavs came back and ended up stealing that game. I think it was 132-129. Well, this is another worst-case scenario loss for Toronto.
Yeah, the only way it could really be worse for them, Nick, is if one of their star players had gotten hurt.
Agreed. Absolutely. Barring injury, it could not have been worse. Like, if LeBron goes out and does what he did in Game 7, if LeBron has 40 points and is dominating the game, or by the way, if it was the way they lost last year against the Raptors in the playoffs, the Cavs hit 35 more three-pointers than Toronto. If the Cavs just had a lights-out, oh, my God, shooting night.
Yeah, but that wasn't possible this year, Nick, because we've changed our offense. We have perimeter shooters. Like, our three-point shooting's going to be better.
Oh, for Toronto, right.
Yes.
You're not going to have that discrepancy.
But that's why it was less what Cleveland did and more what Toronto didn't do. And you wonder if just seeing LeBron out there when usually he's at his best, if that just froze this Toronto team, and all of a sudden they were like, well, we don't win these games. We're probably not going to win this game, and then no shots.
We can blame it on whatever we want, but there's some clear examples as far as not being able to finish in the paint. They dominated the glass. They dominated in the paint, but losing a possession after a timeout on a 5-second violation, Kyle Lowry throwing the ball in over LeBron. You know LeBron's guarding him. Like, why would you have him throw the ball in? You just calling a timeout. Put a taller person out there that has a height advantage, or at least it's neutral. They negate each other. Like bad coaching at the end, wasting timeouts. Like so they didn't have a timeout.
The biggest shot of your season. Fred VanVleet's been an awesome story. A potential 6th Man of the Year candidate.
Yes.
He was injured.
With what?
With a right shoulder injury. He's a right-handed shooter. He hadn't played in the fourth quarter. Let's have our biggest shot of the season come down to Fred VanVleet. All of it was unforgivable by Toronto. And listen, one of the reasons I believe, CC, that the Pacers were a bad matchup for the Cavs. There's a lot of X's and O's stuff, but it's also because their best player, Victor Oladipo, doesn't have any bad experience against LeBron. When he played in the East, his team was terrible, never made the playoffs. Played a year in OKC. He's never played LeBron in the playoffs. He went into that series saying, you know what, I'm going to play the best player in the world as close to even as possible.
Well, because the one thing also he can do is because we know from LeBron going back to Derrick Rose when he was in his prime.
Yeah.
When they put LeBron on that point guard late in the game, which we saw last night, he did to Kyle Lowry, shut him down. Yeah. They can't do that to Oladipo because he can beat LeBron off the dribble.
He's too fast.
And that's the disadvantage. There's some other things as far as the Pacers, them being a younger team, and they do some things that give Cleveland problems, but talent-wise, Toronto is far more talented.
Agreed. The point that I'm making on Oladipo is Oladipo, we were talking at halftime. I said if the Cavs had a lead at halftime against the Pacers, you felt the entire second half the Cavs were just desperately trying to hold on for dear life. They were down 3 at half against the Raptors. LeBron walking off the court, shaking his head, yes, feeling confident. There was no mental block from Oladipo. Yeah. I've never beat this guy. How do I beat this guy?
I think also,
that exists with Toronto.
That initial burst that you know you're going to get being there in Toronto, that energy, how well the team played early. They were down 14 to be able to get it back at 3. Yes, you could see that. Good. We were talking on the phone there. You were like, yeah, but even if the end, I could see what you're saying now because of the history, man. And the history, even that the Cavs, these younger Cavs player, because what LeBron did in the last month of the season against the Raptors.
Not to mention the fact the Cavs never led during regulation.
Yes.
To win a game or to be Toronto and to lose a game where your opponent never led during regulation is something else. How deflating is this for them moving forward? How much more of an advantage do the Cavs have looking ahead now?
Listen, I thought the Cavs had a distinct advantage over Toronto going into it because of the matchups, because of the history, because the Raptors don't have anyone you can even throw at LeBron. But the only way the Raptors had a shot in this series to me was if the games, the 50-50 games, they got to win them. And this wasn't a 50-50 game. This was a 75-25 Raptors game.
Yeah.
And they lost it. You mentioned, this is only the second time in 20 years a team has lost a playoff game without ever trailing in regulation. It doesn't happen. And the Raptors got to sit on that and deal with that tonight, headed into tomorrow.
The only thing that keeps me from being overly optimistic is I've seen the Cavs. I'm still concerned about their support or lack of support of LeBron. Now, he got that last night, but Kevin Love didn't score. I mean, in a game that we need him, doesn't get in double figures. So I'm like, okay, now the game number 2 is vitally important. We understand that. But I know if they get it to 1-1, I know Toronto can beat them one game in Cleveland because this is Cleveland team. They're still a Jekyll and Hyde. LeBron will pick up his play, though. That's what they really should be concerned about game 2 and moving forward.
And on a night where LeBron called it arguably the worst game of his career between
of the season.
Yeah, a little drama in that. A little drama in that,
He
Jenna.
accounted for 59 points last night. I hope he just plays like a medium game next time for game 2. We'll talk much more about this, and you mentioned Kevin Love. We will talk about his role moving forward. But coming up, are the Golden State Warriors unstoppable now that Steph Curry is back? We're going to talk Warriors in a second, but first, LeBron catching the alley-oop from Jeff Green's inbounds pass. Boom.
The only way you saw this live is if you were in the arena.
Yes.
We were in some highlight or some graphics package when this play happened.
Definitely not going to win an Emmy for that telecast part of it. No, LeBron made a great read. Him and Jeff Green make eye contact with each other. He goes back door and out of bounds and finishes it on top of his head.
Ooh, DeMar DeRozan hits the tough reverse layup, 2 of his 22 on the night.
DeRozan was good, not great. Which is one of the problems the Raptors had last night. I felt like he could have. I feel like he should have been more aggressive. I feel like when Lowry's only going to take 12 shots, DeRozan had the opportunity to take more than the 20 he took.
Oh, Pelicans Warriors Anthony Davis with the yam. And Nick, he didn't have to jump 20 feet to catch this pass for once.
Because Rondo's the one passing.
Perfect pass.
Rondo throws you the perfect pass. It's the Solomon Hill, each one more alley-oops that make me, oh no, what's happening?
Over 2 Warriors. Clay's up under him. Draymond coming from the backside. This is, quietly, this is a nice, spectacular play.
Oh, absolutely. And, Draymond played AD great last night.
Hey, welcome back, Steph Curry. Saves the ball from a backcourt violation and then, splashes the 3.
How many feet is that?
It was listed at 32 is what they said on the official box score. However many.
Did they move the 3-point line back?
Right. That's why I didn't think it was 32. It seemed like it was, but that's what it was listed in the play-by-play. You know how many feet it was, though, CC? Steph Curry feet. That's what it was. Because that's the Steph Curry shot. It's those types of plays that made him famous.
Did you see him warming up before the game? Not out of the tunnel. 3 in a row from half court.
Oh, I thought Andy was doing hoodie Steph. Hoodie Melo's gone now. There was hoodie Steph before the game.
He was so rusty, guys. Just so rusty.
Oh, my
All right, let's dive in a little deeper. Warriors-Pelicans game 2 last night. The long-awaited return of that guy, Steph Curry. Good news, bad news when he gets hurt. Bad news, it hurts. Good news, he seems to come back like a man on a mission. So 2 years ago, first game back after missing a few weeks with a sprained knee, 40 points. Last night, first game back after missing a few weeks with a sprained knee, 28 points in 27 minutes. What? Warriors won game 2, 121-116. They take a 2-0 series lead. Steph spoke after the game about returning to the floor.
Real eager, as of late, trying to get back out there and be with my teammates and do what I love to do. So to get back out there on the floor, play some playoff basketball, and get a big win tonight. It was huge. It was a good feeling. The crowd was crazy, and obviously we did what we needed to do in these first 2 games, going up 2-0, and we got to have our game travel to New Orleans.
I don't know how many of us thought, well, he's probably going to come back and be rusty and not really be able to hit anything because that's not his track record. But, Nick, how impressive was his performance? What you saw last night, just spot on.
How impressive was Steph Curry? Steph Curry was Steph Curry impressive. A locked-in, dialed-in Steph Curry, which is one of the 5 most terrifying offensive forces in the history of this great game. Steph Curry, when he is firing on all cylinders, I'm not sure exactly what you're supposed to do with him. And this is one of the reasons why a couple years ago when he came back from the injury and scored the 40 and then struggled a bit in the finals, I got so aggravated. We were like, Steph wasn't at full strength. I don't know what full strength is for Steph Curry. Here's what I do know. When he plays, no matter how long the layoff is, no matter what injuries come back from, whether it's an MCL or an ankle, whatever it is, when he's out there, he's petrifying. He was the difference in the game last night. He was, we can show you the numbers in a little bit later on in the segment, but like him on and off the court was the difference in the game. The way the Pelicans were on a bit of a run, you know how, CC, the Warriors stopped the run? They didn't call timeout. They subbed Steph Curry into the game for the first time. And the Warriors instantly went on a 5-0 run, and the crowd got into it. He was spectacular.
Yeah, Steph had the benefit, too, because he's playing on such a great team, that they didn't have to force him to start the game. And him coming off the bench, it allowed, because that initial, when you're trying to come back from an injury, you can force your body to try to do the things that you're not necessarily comfortable at doing. And starting the game is not necessarily the best entry point when you've been off for over a month. So I thought that Steve Kerr did a tremendous job of letting the game find its flow. He didn't put Steph in to stop the run. He had a time that he was going to put him in there because that was the plan. So to see Steph play the number of minutes that he did play, you know he's going to be able to shoot. He's the greatest shooter that's ever played in the NBA.
Right.
So you know that's going to be there. But his overall playmaking, you could see that in what it adds to this team. And when they play together, their ability to be able to pass the basketball and make shots. The sets that they run are tremendous. I mean, even late in the game where this game is tight, they have out-of-bounds play. They post up Kevin Durant. They throw it into him. Draymond and Steph do a scissors, and they pass to Steph. He knocks down one. It's like, man, I haven't seen him run that play in a long time. So what they can do and what Steph adds to this, he's a special player, and that's why they have the championships that they have.
And I'm glad you mentioned Draymond, because I don't want to disregard him. He's playing his best basketball of the season at the best time of the season. He had a triple-double.
Well, he has 2 games. The first round wasn't a great round
No,
for him.
I'm
These
really
2 games.
It's exactly what I'm talking about. He triple-double in the first game of this series. He was a rebound away from triple-double last night. Anthony Davis, he totally neutralized Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis was 4 for 13 from the field when Draymond was guarding him. So Draymond was great. But I just want to show the audience what the Warriors' offense was with and without Steph. Steph only played 28 minutes. So 20 minutes without him, 28 minutes with him. Their offensive rating was 130 when he's on the court. The NBA record all time for a season is 116. Without him, it was 72. The Suns this year, the worst offense in basketball, were about 98. So they're way above the all-time record with them on the court, way below the worst team in the league with them off the court. Shoot 43% from 3 versus 17% from 3. By the way, it's not they shot 17 threes without him on the court. They just couldn't make them. They were 2 different teams last night with and without him.
You made an interesting point while we were watching Kevin Durant and Steph Curry in the press conference, and you said, look how much pressure that takes off Kevin Durant. Not that KD goes into a game feeling the pressure and can't perform because of it, because he has been the one to carry the team. But what does a performance like what we saw last night from Steph do for someone like Kevin Durant, who never wanted to really be the face of this team?
Man, he's cool. That's his personality. Like, we don't want to accept it sometime, but he don't necessarily want the limelight. He just wants to play basketball the way he says. At the press conference, he loved it. A lot of questions were directed to Steph. Man, he was just sitting there chilling. He's played a good game. No, he didn't do nothing. He only had 29 points.
Right.
You know, so that is the luxury of going to Golden State. That's the reason why I respect the decision that he made, to be able to play with the shooters, to play the style of basketball, to not be under the microscope and the pressure if he had gone other places. Yeah, I understand that, because he's playing to his strong suit. That's really his personality, and he's living his own truth. And I got to respect that.
And think about just what Steph did for this team in yesterday's game specifically. The Pelicans starters, we know they got a weak bench, and it showed up last night. Every single one of their starters had at least 14. They had 3 starters with at least 20. Klay Thompson has his worst game in 2 months. He's 4 of 20 from the field for 10 points. And this is a game the Warriors are up 13 with a few minutes left. I know they ended up winning by 5. Pelicans went on a mini run at the end to cut it to 6 with about 30 seconds left. But the Warriors were in firm control for the bulk of the fourth quarter. Why? Because KD can get a quiet 29. Yes. Draymond can do everything on both sides of the ball, well, particularly defensively, I should say, but also passing and rebounding the ball.
Yeah, Draymond played a great game.
Draymond was outstanding. And then Steph just rips your heart out. Jenna, you've heard Chris and I talk all the time about the gravity Steph has. You see it when he's out there. How much easier are the passing lanes for the Warriors? Because you're playing 4-on-4 if he doesn't have the ball. Because his man has to be 30 feet from the basket. Like, it's just, I mean, the Death Star that the Warriors lineup can be was fully engaged last night. And the whole league's on notice. The entire league, and by the entire league, we're really talking about Houston. Houston's the team that's been circling them. That's what we're looking at.
All right, we'll watch this again, Game 3, Friday night at New Orleans, where the series will shift there. Coming up, talk some football. Just how much has Des Bryant declined? Next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, it's time for Say What? Can't get that high this week. Victor Oladipo and the Pacers were bounced by the Cavs in Game 7 on Sunday. Oladipo had an interesting comparison in his exit interview with GM Kevin Pritchard. Say what?
In the exit meeting, Chad Buchanan, my general manager, queued up Milli Vanilli, Girl You Know It's True. And Victor walked in, and we shut it off, and he goes, what song is that? I kind of heard it, and I said, well, you know what? That's probably the biggest one-hit wonder that's ever happened. The question is, are you a one-hit wonder? Is this just a one-year deal? And so I challenged him. I feel like I can challenge. I know he challenges him every day, but I feel like I can challenge. And his response was, no, I'm more Michael Jackson.
Wow. You like that? First, great job by our graphics people. That's amazing. But Cece, you like that?
Yeah, that's how you get the wine out the grape. You need pressure. That's why coaches, organization, that's why it's important to be in the right spot. If he had stayed in OKC, I can guarantee you that moment would have never, ever happened.
Man,
these are the stories that brick the path to greatness. Tremendous story.
It takes some gumption to, as the GM, as the team, when Victor's coming in, the year he's had, to try to challenge him like that. To say, oh, are you going to be a one-hit wonder? Like, that's... I like Victor's answer. I know this is supposed to be like a funny thing that we do, but that I hadn't heard that. I didn't know what he was going to say there.
Yeah, the guy got one job. Make him better. All right? Get a coach better players. And if you get the star better, it's a lot easier to get the team better if you make the star better. Start at the top. That's great management.
That was awesome. Jenna, you were
Much
wondering
respect.
why he said Michael Jackson?
Yeah, I didn't until the very end.
He had a lot of hits. Not one hit, a lot of hits.
Got it.
King of pop.
Got it. Moving on, the fact that I needed that explained to me is so disturbing. Yeah. Moving on to some stories to start your morning quickly. Cavs beat the Raptors 113-112 in overtime last night to take Game 1. LeBron had his 21st career playoff triple-double, finishing with 26, 11, and 13. But the Kings said it was, quote, one of my worst games of the season. Nick, how did LeBron look last night?
LeBron's in such an odd place. He has a triple-double. He hits the game-tying, very difficult fall-away jump shot. He outscores the Raptors by himself in the final 4 minutes, and I thought it was a C-minus game. I agree with him. I didn't think he played well. He didn't shoot well. He didn't get to the rim at will, and his free throws were as bad as they've been all year, and they called him for a lane violation on one. So I understand what he's saying, see?
Well, he was more of the leader in this game. Like, he didn't play. I didn't like the three-point selection, especially in the fourth quarter. I think he took 5 three-pointers in the fourth quarter. That was a bad choice. It was an easy way out. But LeBron was tired, man.
Yeah.
And he was burnt. And being the ball handler, the primary ball handler for this offense, LeBron still played a great game. It was still a great game, Nick. Not no C-minus. Because did his team get on the winning bus?
No, of course. Listen, of course. I just think by he doesn't like the fact that he shot almost 40% from the field. That's what that's about.
Yeah, he just wanted
12 of 30.
himself.
All right, you guys see what just happened right there? In the same game, Raptors superfan Drake and Cavs big man Kendrick Perkins got into a verbal altercation before halftime. In other words, they had a fight. The two had to be separated by security and teammates. Cece, what'd you make of Drake coming at Perkins?
Come on. I mean, like, what's he going to do? Like, Kendrick Perkins is for real. Like, he's one of the few NBA guys that's a real tough guy. Drake, like, stop. Stop pretending. We know you're cheering for your team and everything. Let's not get carried away, though.
And Drake likes inserting himself in these things. Kendrick Perkins said at halftime he was talking to Serge Ibaka. Remember, they famously, obviously, were on the Thunder together. Right. Drake inserted himself in the conversation. Kendrick told him to sit his bleep down. And then after the game, according to Bruce Arthur of the Toronto Sun, Drake called him a couple derogatory words and said, we can handle this. Listen, Drake, you create hits. You seem to be a good guy. Kendrick Perkins is 6'10", 270 pounds. You used to be on Degrassi, and you made Marvin's Room. Those are not problems you want in this world. Nobody wants Kendrick Perkins problems. Come on, Drake. Got to know better than that.
That reminds me of Nick Wright at the Red Rooster.
Okay.
Meet me outside.
All right.
Meet me outside. Did that dude leave yet? Meet me outside.
All right.
Did he leave yet?
You would have preferred my comment, but now everyone knows where you party. All right, finally,
The spots.
it looks like the Paul George experiment in OKC is over. Reports are that PG-13 will take his talents elsewhere this offseason after the Thunder failed to advance past the first round. Nick, where's the best fit for Paul George this offseason?
The place people have pegged him to for the last few years, Los Angeles.
L.A.
Along with another superstar. Maybe another 2 superstars if they can make it work. Like, I think it's where he wants to go. If I'm Paul George, I don't see any reason to stay in Oklahoma City. And you can get a fresh start. Now, what Paul George does know is he needs a guy who is markedly better than him if he's going to compete for a championship. Not a lot of guys like that. Paul George is somewhere between the 9th to 14th best player in the league. So we're talking guys markedly better. It's only 5 or 6 guys. But 2 of those guys could be on the move this offseason in Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James. He would need to pair up with one of those guys, I would imagine. I think Los Angeles is where it makes sense. I think that's where he'll end up, and I think that's probably the best fit.
When people ask me this, which they do quite often, the easy way out now is to say the Lakers.
I wouldn't
Almost
try and
everyone.
take the easy way out.
Well, it's the easy way out. So I'm just going to think a little bit outside the box.
Okay.
What would Paul George look like with the 76ers? They could use another wing player. All right? Maybe they don't want LeBron, but if they get Paul George, you saying he don't need to be the main guy? Well, he don't have to be the main guy there. You got Ben Simmons and you got Joel Embiid. But I think Philadelphia, especially given what Boston is going to have next year, like if they want to take control of the East, if they want to really be about some championships, man, look into Paul George. Yeah, look into Paul. It ain't no foregone conclusion because you're talking about the scenario, what's the best fit for Paul George? Well, there's no one in L.A. There's people in Philadelphia, and he's a better fit right now for what Philly has compared to the fantasy basketball we'd have to play to get him on the Lakers.
The Sixers in the East are becoming the Lakers of the West. Where are we going to go in the East? Send him to Philadelphia. Where could LeBron go? Philadelphia.
Well, here's the thing. I agree that Philadelphia is an excellent basketball fit. Like, I think that they need a guy such as Paul George. Obviously, they value three-point shooting. He's a good three-point shooter. They were one of the 3 best defenses in basketball this year. Adding Paul George, another long, excellent wing defender, would take that up another notch. But I don't think talking about the Lakers is fantasy basketball at all. They have
No. Well, I mean, you just have to put a lot of other pieces that we don't know. If you putting Paul George on the Lakers right now, how attractive are they? We saw him playing with Westbrook.
Right. No, you need another star along with it. Now the Lakers have done
1 or 2.
Well, yeah, depending on who the one is. Like, if it's because Paul and Russ, obviously, and Russ's star wasn't enough. What the Lakers were able to do, though, this year, via that trade with the Cavs, oddly enough, is make it so they will be free and clear to sign 2 max free agents, not just 1. With the roster they have now, they can sign 2. And that's obvious. Listen, that's been Magic Johnson's plan for quite some time. But I understand from a basketball perspective, Paul George is a great fit in Philadelphia.
Quickly, give me a name that you'd love to see play with Paul George on the Lakers.
I'd love to see Kawhi with them.
Oh, that's a good one.
It'd be tough to score on that team. 2 of the best perimeter defending forwards in the league. Right, and I think that's on the board as well.
We'll hear what Kawhi has to say. Oh, no, we don't. Kawhi doesn't talk. Our Des Bryant watch continues.
Why you should talk?
You have to make up your mind, Jenna. What, you want him to talk or you want him to be quiet? Which one?
Guess what?
You're in a lot of different corners.
Walking, talking contradiction, baby, and I'm embracing it fully.
Hey, want that dude to talk. Hey, want that dude to shut up.
That's right.
Hey, I want him to talk.
Same with me. Our Des Bryant watch continues this morning. It is May 2nd, and Des remains unsigned. Many are curious why the 3-time Pro Bowler has not been picked up yet by any team. Among other reasons, he hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since 2014. That's like so many years ago. Also, his personality has rubbed some the wrong way. Also, the Cowboys' chief of scouting, Will McClay, looked at the tape and said, Des struggles with, quote, the inability to win one-on-one, to win down the field. All right, CC, let me start first with, in football terms, what exactly is Will saying there? What does he mean by what Dez can't do down the field?
Well, typically, Dez Bryant, he's an X receiver. The X receiver is typically going to play to the boundary. The boundary, what is that? That's the short side of the field.
Okay.
So the skill set for those guys happens to be typically we want them bigger than the other receivers. We want them to be more physical because they're closer to the contact. They're closer to the other defenders. And the way the routes and the route tree in a passing game is made up, it's almost like a basketball team. He's like a 3. You need him to score. You need him to rebound. You need him to be able to play defense compared to being a 1 and being a point guard and being the Z receiver and being to the field. So straight out of the book of a Michael Irvin, all right? He's going to be a physical guy. But because they have Ezekiel and they have that tremendous offensive line, they face an 8-man box. It's easy math. Football's about math. Who can cause the double team? Ezekiel can do that. He makes them put the extra guy in the box. They only got 3 other defenders. So if you have 2 receivers on the field, they can only play you single coverage. So this scout is telling you, in these looks that we get, Dez Bryant, he would not win on a consistent basis.
And those are the most, just to jump in real quick, correct me, those are the most beneficial looks for a wide receiver. It's the ideal situation.
That's the best
It's the
look
best
you'll ever get in football. That's why wide receivers who know the game, when you ask them what do they want, absent of a great quarterback, they want a running game because a running game dictates you can get a lot of man-to-man. So this is not as if people haven't said this. People just weren't listening. I've been saying this for over 3 years that Dez was on the decline. The reason why people could catch up to him was he didn't have the diversification in the routes, and he wasn't this super explosive athlete that won these one-on-one matchups on the outside. So the scout now has given people privy of the information. Dallas, not only do you scout the rest of the league, the most important scouting they do is scouting your own team.
Right.
Like, you need to know what your players do. The thing I'm disappointed in that we just went over Pritchard and the Pacers in the exit meeting with their star player. In the exit meeting, typically the team gives you some type of prescription for what they want you to do and where they see you moving forward with the team.
Yeah.
Why didn't they sit Dez down with that information?
2 years ago.
They should have been sitting Dez down and letting him know these are the things that you need to work on.
Unless what they saw was, we don't think this is fixable, and we don't think with what you have.
Well, that's this year. Chris is saying, why didn't they talk about this?
That's what I'm saying.
Dez has only played for one team. What Dez knows in football, they taught Dez. So what Dez couldn't do, they didn't teach him.
So then if that's that's what's being put out there, Nick, what does this mean for the future of Dez Bryant now?
Well, listen. This is a criticism that is not from an anonymous scout. It's not from a former scout. It's not from someone that works on a different team or used to be in the league and is now in broadcasting. This is a scout, the head scout for the team you played for. And this is something I've learned from you, CC, to think about, wait, when did Will McClay get a speaking role with the Dallas Cowboys? We cover the Cowboys more than we cover any football team in the league. We cover them more than we cover the AFC South combined. I've never heard this dude's name ever attached to a quote. So did he just all of a sudden decide, I'm going to absolutely try to kneecap Dez's value, or was he given the okay? Because you guys know this. I am a sports radio nerd, right? So I actually have an idea of what they're saying on sports radio in Dallas. And since Jason Witten's been moved on from, or looks like he is, you know what the conversation has turned to? Could we bring Dez back? Was the real issue between Witten and Dez, like, would he take less money? So, see, like, do you think I'm drawing on things here? Or, like, who gives Will McClay the authority to say these things on the record?
Only thing I've heard from Dallas in covering the Dallas Cowboys, their players, Bruce Dalrymple, their media relations, a senior VP, does a tremendous job. So he makes sure he corrals them, that they don't say things that would end up on television shows like this. Jason Garrett, he's the #1 spokesman. He's the head coach. Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. Them the only people that talk about the Cowboys and what they do. Typically, even from I told Nick this, watch Jerry Jones, he'll start talking about football. He'll start breaking down X's and O's. But where's the scout? When does the scout get involved in this? So now Dez is gone, and they're getting heat in Dallas. And Dez has been one of the greatest players for the Cowboys. So let's send my man out there to send this message to justify why we got rid of Dez. So let's put the information out there. But the thing that people shouldn't be, this shouldn't be new information. The NFL films and the breakdown in the coaches tape, so many people are watching this. Thousands of people are watching this. So this is not foreign. If you know football and you watch football, these are things people have been saying about Dez Bryant for the last 3 years.
Yeah, but all the other teams have access to this? Because the Ravens were happy to offer him a long-term contract. And
well, there are no perfect players, Jenna. There's plenty of players out there that have some type of deficiency. Sure. You know what you do? You put things around them. You also coach them up. But players aren't perfect. Organizations aren't looking for perfect players. And that information didn't inform teams. Teams are up on Buffalo. What did the general manager say?
We
watched the tape.
And then we're done with it.
So, like what you said, does this go ahead and kneecap him for future teams? Does this affect him in any way?
No, he's still going to get a job. No, because people will need wide receivers. Dez can still play football. Like, there's no perfect players.
And when I say kneecap's probably too strong of a word, I wasn't saying he won't get a job. I'm saying this is another mark against him from something that matters. Before we move on, I want to ask you one question on this. You mentioned 8 years in Dallas. We knew who the type of player Dez was coming out of Oklahoma State. The Cowboys did, I think, a really good job helping Dez off the field. Dez and his lack of evolution on the field. How much of the blame on that is on the player? How much of that, in your eyes, is on the coaching staff and the organization for not, to use one of your favorite terms, getting all the juice out of the berry?
Ultimately, in this business, broadcasting, and in that business as a professional, you are responsible for your own development. You cannot depend on a broadcast network. You cannot depend on a coach, a general manager. You can't do like Oladipo, expect your general manager to do that. That is not that. That's what he should do, but you can't expect that. And if you don't have it, you have to go out and seek. There are too many coaches. There's too much information out there that allows players to be able to get better. There's too many resources that even absent of a strong organization or a strong coaching staff, you're responsible. Dez is ultimately responsible for his own development.
But quickly, if you're saying that there are certain things he's not doing, X, Y, and Z, and the team put that out there. Isn't that on the team to have taught them that, if that's the only place he's ever really grown up and learned?
Sometimes when you're a teacher and sometimes Johnny can't read, sometimes it's the teacher's fault, but a lot of times it might be Johnny's fault.
Got it. All right, we'll take a break. Coming up, can Big Ben really play for 5 more years? Oh, he thinks so, if he doesn't say he's going to retire first. That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by former head coach Eric Mangini, who was just going through the list of things he's going to do while he's here in New York, since it's going to be 90 degrees today and nobody's complaining about it.
It's a gorgeous day in New York City.
Your top 3 today, quick.
Central Park.
Central Park.
Yep. That's it. I think I'm just going to spend the day in the park and relax.
Tap out at Central Park. I like it.
A lot to do in Central Park.
There are a lot
big park.
Do fishing.
It is
go to a
big
zoo.
Park.
Nice little hot dog.
You can do a little workout with me.
It is a big park. That was a nice bridge.
Fox hires y'all's replacements.
It is
when Fox hires y'all's replacements.
If Fox hired my replacement, not knowing when I was going to retire, and made her follow me around all day and made her mentor me, not sure how I'd feel. Well, the Steelers did the same thing, right? They drafted Ben Roethlisberger's possible replacement in Mason Rudolph. He's going to follow Ben Roethlisberger around, and Big Ben will probably be expected to do some mentoring. Ben, however, is on a different page. He said this: well, that's fine. He can take over someday, but I plan on playing for 3 to 5 more years, depending on how the line goes and staying healthy, if I can stay healthy. If he's going to be their guy, that's great, but in my perfect world, it's not going to be for a while. All right, let's start with you, Coach. What's Ben Roethlisberger's role in Mason Rudolph's development?
Well, first of all, I think this couldn't have worked out better for the Steelers. If drafting Mason Rudolph where they drafted him motivates Ben Roethlisberger to up his game and to stay for 3 to 5 more years, that's fantastic. Now, the question is, once he gets into camp and Ben takes a look at Mason and says, okay, this guy's not that big of a threat, or evaluates it and it's not quite what he expected, I think that could change dramatically. In terms of his responsibility for the development, I don't think anybody's responsible for anybody else's development. The player ultimately is responsible for his own development. The organization will help that. But what you would like is that Ben take a step back and think about his legacy and think maybe I can help this guy take over when I eventually do leave.
What ideally, as a coach, what does if you're the coach of the Steelers, what does Ben Roethlisberger's relationship with Mason Rudolph like?
You'd want it to be one that has a mentoring component to it, and you'd want Mason Rudolph to do a lot of things to help Ben prepare during the week. Oftentimes, those young quarterbacks can do some research either on the defensive backs or a component of the game plan that maybe the starter hasn't been able to spend as much time on, and then he brings some value into the quarterback room, into the meeting room that's additional to what the coaches are giving him.
Yeah, to me, the story is Ben Roethlisberger and him changing from how long he's going to play. That's the biggest part of the story. I know this. The NFL is not a business that you can do year to year unless you are late, year 14, 15, 16, 17. If you're Drew Brees, if you're Tom Brady, you can go year to year. But when you're in your mid-30s, the way Ben was, and with the type of team and organization and support that he had around him and the type of support, it is critical that the organization and your teammates know, man, I am totally bought into this. It's important for them to know that football is your number one business. Besides your family, that playing football and playing it well, that's what your teammates and the organization need to know. Ben has sent us mixed signals for the last 2 off seasons. So for me, it was nice to see that's the type of attitude that I want from all the players, let alone my franchise quarterback. Yes, I'm going to be playing, because if you project that I'm going to be playing, it lets the team know that I am going to be focused. It also, from Ben's standpoint, because what I would like to see is I like to see Ben lose some weight. If you're going to continue to play, I believe that you should be at a weight that I believe is more conducive to you moving around a little bit as you get later in your career. Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady's super fit. Drew Brees is super fit. They would never have a weight problem. Eli Manning, he's super fit. Very, very seldom can you be a quarterback and continue to be at that weight that you were at a younger age.
Ben's you're listening to quarterbacks who are super fit. Like, when you talk about that aspect of it, Ben's the only quarterback I can think of that isn't. Like, can anyone else mind's eye think of a quarterback where it's
Eli's not super fit.
No, Eli is.
No.
You don't.
He might not be ripped.
No.
He might not be ripped, Jenna, but he doesn't look like he's got weight to lose. Go ahead, C. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I can't think of a quarterback out there that I would say could.
Right now, they might not look like the best athletes. Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, they might not. But up close and personal, you would be very impressed with Eli Manning if you reached out and touched him. Now, they're not freaking Michael Vick, but Nick, you are right. There is no one the size and of him. Now, he has that that's the old style quarterback. That's the way we had a bunch of quarterbacks that were like that. 6'5", 240-ish, but we don't see as many anymore.
When you play against Big Ben and you watch your defensive backs blitz and they bounce off them and defensive linemen can't bring him down, I'm okay with him not being super fit. If I'm the head coach, if he can maintain that presence in the pocket that he has, that strength that he has in the pocket, his ability to create plays, and we'd say over and over again.
Being fit, though, that just enhances that, Coach. That doesn't take that away.
Yeah.
Now, besides last season, what's the question marks about Ben? Man, his durability.
No, and I'm never going to knock someone for trying to stay as fit as possible, especially as they get older. I just think that his size has always been a real advantage to him. What I love about this pick, though, is if it motivates him at this point in his career to do things that he wasn't willing to do and to take a step back and say, okay, this is my job, you're not going to take it. That, to me, is a great thing.
He's also in a good position in that his offensive line is all under contract. Juju Smith-Schuster, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. He's got all his weapons intact. All he's got to do is worry about coming in and playing football and not who he's going to throw to, who he's going to hand the ball to, and who's going to protect him.
Well, there's one name you mentioned there that if we're going to tease this out further, that I think there might be some ripple effect on, and that is L. Bell. If your franchise quarterback is saying, I want to play past, when he says 3 to 5 years, that's past the contract he's under. We already know AB's under a long-term contract that pays him at the top of the market. If and when Ben gets a new contract, we know how these quarterback contracts work. If you're a franchise quarterback, you all of a sudden become the highest paid or certainly top 2 in the league. And so then you're like, okay, can we have the highest paid wide receiver one of the highest paid quarterbacks and the highest paid running back. Like, that does, right? That it does have an impact on. It's one thing if you're like, well, one more year, then Ben's done. Then we've got a rookie quarterback making no money. Then we can't afford to have L. Bell. Like, that is the, if we're teasing this forward.
That's a real thing. You know, because Ben, all he's got to do is go back in there and tell the Steelers, I want more money. That was one of the signs that I saw from in talking to you. Man, what do you think is going to happen with this? When he says that in the organization, that's going to affect L. Bell and their ability to be able to give him long-term money.
But when you're sitting back there as either the head coach or GM, and now you hear these comments, you're wondering, well, which Ben is it? Is it the guy that said he was going to retire a few years ago? Is it the guy that says he wants to play 3 or 5 more years? We're going to have to go down a little bit of this road and see who shows up at training camp.
During the season said, maybe I'm washed up. Maybe I'm done. Like after the Jags game, like he has been, he has been hot and cold on this, right?
And this puts pressure on him initially, but when they get to camp and he takes a look at how big a threat Mason Rudolph truly is, if he doesn't feel it's that significant, then it's going to go back to where it was in terms of his level.
All right, Coach, we're going to see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, back to basketball. Are the Warriors going to run away with their 3rd title in 4 years? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. Chris Mannix joins the show. Hey,
good to
Chris.
see you, Mannix. How are you, brother? It's been too long.
I know, a couple weeks.
Good to see you, brother. What's up, C?
Give it to him.
I think we might all be on the same page on this one.
All right, the table is set. Let's go. Warriors and Pelicans game 2 last night. The long-awaited return of Steph Curry. And just like he did last time he was out a few weeks with an injury, he did not miss a beat. 28 points in 27 minutes. Warriors won game 2, 121-116, taking a 2-games-to-none series lead. Here's Steph Curry speaking after the game about returning to the floor.
Real eager as of late, trying to get back out there and be with my teammates and do what I love to do. So to get back out there on the floor, play some playoff basketball, and get a big win tonight. It was huge. It was a good feeling. The crowd was crazy. And obviously we did what we needed to do in these first 2 games, going up 2-0, and we got to have our game travel to New Orleans.
So, Chris Mannix, we took a tiny hiatus from jumping on the Warriors bandwagon to all jump on Houston's bandwagon for a bit, and then we saw Steph Curry come back, and we were like, what were we doing for those couple of weeks? Do you think the Warriors reestablished themselves as favorites to win the title after what you saw last night?
Yeah, I mean, I never took them off that kind of pole position, knowing who Steph is and what he brings to the table. So I always thought they were the favorites. Beating them 4 out of 7 was going to be virtually impossible. What I took away, though, from that game was what a blown opportunity for New Orleans. I mean, Anthony Davis is supposed to be this superstar in the league. The 4th quarter, Anthony Davis was a no-show, while Kevin Durant was going off, while Draymond Green was going off. Where was Anthony Davis in this one? So, yeah, I mean, look, give credit to Golden State. Steph's back right now. I don't see how New Orleans wins any more than 1 game in this series. But this is a game, game 2, when they're going to look back and say, wow, we had a chance. We had a chance with Klay Thompson missing, with Steph Curry just coming back. Anthony Davis did not show up. 5 points in that 4th quarter. That killed them.
Yeah, and with New Orleans, especially the first half, when you get through that initial burst, that crowd, Steph coming in, everyone standing up. Because you look at right at halftime, that game was there for them. If you because you have to steal a game. And it wasn't as if Golden State was playing awful. The Pelicans were playing good, too. They had made some adjustments offensively, what they were going to try to do to them, the way they were attacking them. But as you mentioned, man, when they got to crunch time, which was AD time, and Nick and I talked about this the last couple of days, unless he had a stat line very, very similar to LeBron, like 25, that's a subpar night based on what we need him to do with that lack of bench. We need him 35. 38. And what you're saying, if he was able to have that push there at the end, that's where he would have had to be for the Pelicans to pull this off. Nick.
Listen, so to answer the question quickly, because I was probably early on the Rockets as far as, and I might end up being wrong, by the way. We'll see. I'm not ready to say the Warriors, okay, clearly they're the favorites now. The Rockets have home court. The Rockets are as healthy as they've been all year. The Rockets are also looking wildly impressive in this postseason, just like Golden State is. So I don't want to be too reactionary to that. I would still, in the Western Conference Finals, pick the Rockets by this much. So I still do feel that way. But about your point about last night's game, you're totally right. Like, Anthony Davis, I understand Draymond Green is Defensive Player of the Year, defending, and arguably should have been for the last 3 years. But that's because he can guard 5 positions. It's because of what he allows you to do switching. It shouldn't be because he can shut down the best big man in the NBA. Anthony Davis, when guarded by Draymond Green, was 4 of 13. When guarded by everyone else, Anthony Davis was 8 of 11. And in the fourth quarter, you're right. Like, I said yesterday on the show, and I think we all agreed, that the only way the Pelicans had a shot to win this series is if they left Golden State one apiece. Because I know Charles Barkley and everyone says, a series doesn't start till the road team wins a game. Well, guess what? You're skeptical if someone can beat Golden State 4 out of 7. Nobody can beat them 4 out of 5. Yeah. Like, not happening. And that's now the position the Pelicans are in. This game was 86-85. With 7 minutes left, or 7.5 minutes left. Like, they had the opportunity.
That's Davis time. That's when, look, we had this, like, after the first round series, the conversation had shifted back again to, is Anthony Davis the most dominant player in basketball? Is he the best player in basketball? Well, the fourth quarter of last night's game, we saw the best player in basketball right now. Kevin Durant had 15 in the fourth quarter. Right now, look, just we can have it's a subjective conversation, I get that. But 15 points for Kevin Durant when it mattered in the fourth quarter. Anthony Davis didn't even lead his team in shots in the fourth quarter. That was Rondo with 8. He finished with 5 points, really only 2 of them during a consequential period of that game before it got out of reach in the final 3 minutes of it. Anthony Davis needed to play big in that game, and Davis didn't, and that's what cost him.
Let's talk about Steph Curry coming back last night. Nick said earlier he was 100% the difference in that game. Not that we were worried before when he came back, but it seems like everything is clicking out. They're 100% healthy. The Pelicans have a shot to get another game at this point?
At home, yeah, they do. They play pretty well down there. And look, as we've seen throughout the playoffs and historically, I mean, Game 3 is when you get your team's best shot. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see the Pelicans come out with a sense of pride and with, they're a team that has good defensive game plans that played pretty well for most of the game last night. I think they get Game 3. But Nick's right. Like, you don't beat Golden State 4 out of 5. You get that Game 3. You lose Game 4. This series ends back in Oakland in Game 4.
And we can't act as if they didn't need Steph to play the way they did.
They did.
Then they need him to play that way.
Clay didn't play well at all.
No. Draymond had a tremendous game, and they needed that KD to take over in the fourth quarter. So I still feel as if they have a chance. Their bench being short, especially as longer the series goes, the more you try to eat in, or the more that bench is exposed for the lack of help that they provided for this team.
And I'll get to Steph in a second. I want to give KD credit because this was a series going into it. You asked yourself, who do the Warriors have that can guard Anthony Davis? And then you asked yourself, who do the Pelicans have that can even kind of guard Kevin Durant?
That was a bigger question for me.
Right.
I knew they'd have to stick Holiday on him, and that was always a mismatch.
The height difference. Holiday's an outstanding defender, but he's 7 inches shorter.
And it's how KD plays.
Right.
Because KD can bring the ball up. He can cross you over, shoot the 3. But also, he can get the ball on the elbow, face the bucket, and he's great at just shooting right over top of you.
So, and I'm going to let you slide on, I assume something happened in your brain for a second when you said the best player in basketball. Maybe even the Western Conference, maybe even the series. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying there, but I'll let it go. But as far as Steph Curry goes, just show what it was with and without him last night. And by the way, it's not like he played 38 minutes. Played 28 minutes. The Warriors played 20 minutes without Steph Curry. Their offensive rating with him was 130. Without him, it was 72. They took 17 threes with him on the court. They were 3 of 17. With him off the court, pardon me. They were 43% with him on the court. Like, that was the difference last night. Like, KD was excellent. Draymond was excellent. But if Steph was out for both games of the first 2, like we thought he might be. We thought going into the series, the first 2 games in Golden State, they're not going to have Steph for either one. Then it would be 1-1. It wouldn't have mattered that Anthony Davis only had 25 and 10. And on Davis, like, this is where he's at in the league. It's a compliment to him. It's a compliment that you can have 25 and 10 or 25-15, pardon me, and we can say you need to do more. Because he absolutely needed to do more. He needed to have a game where we're having the discussion, is Anthony Davis the best player in the world?
Look, he had an all-NBA superstar first half. And after that, it was largely non-existent. He went into that fourth quarter with 20 points, only had 5 in that period. And one thing I liked about Durant, I mean, you mentioned the mismatch that he had against Drew Holiday. You look at the fourth quarter of that game, they exploited that mismatch. They went to the post. They allowed Durant to shoot over Holiday, whoever they put on him. Where was Anthony Davis in those situations? There's a size advantage that Davis has when he's on Draymond Green. I thought Draymond was in Davis's head in that fourth quarter. I thought he played more physical. I thought he wanted it more. That's the kind of game where if you're Davis, you have to put your team on your back and you have to carry them through some of those stretches. He didn't do it in that game. That's going to cost them the series.
All right, Chris, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, can the Cavaliers continue to overcome Kevin Love's poor play or just Kevin Love not even playing? That's next on First Things First. Time for some stories to start your morning. The Utah Jazz took down the Houston Rockets 116-108 last night. That series all even up at 1 game apiece. Joe Ingles dropping 27 points, going 7 of 9 from three-point land. Donovan Mitchell added 17 points and 11 assists. Nick, how did Utah steal a road win last night?
Man, in addition to the Rockets going cold, the Jazz beat them at their own game, as Cece was talking about earlier, and Joe Ingles was spectacular. You're going to, for the Jazz to win a game, let's not forget, Ricky Rubio's not playing right now. And Donovan Mitchell shot 30% from the field. What, see? Go ahead.
I don't know why we can't be concerned with all that stuff. They shot the ball well. They're not playing without their point guard. They win in Houston.
Oh, I mean, I think it's a bad loss for Houston. I just don't. I don't think it's going to duplicate itself again this series. I think the Rockets played poorly yesterday. I think they should be upset about how they played. I just don't think it's going to indicate what's going to happen down the road.
I think Rockets fans should be concerned.
Okay.
Based on their lack of playoff success, I would be concerned if I lost at home.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to some football. The Jets hope they drafted their franchise quarterback with the 3rd overall pick in Sam Darnold. We might not have to wait that long to see him play. The Jets general manager said Darnold will compete with Josh McCown for the starting job. Shaka Khan. CC, is it a good idea to immediately throw Darnold into the fire that is the New York Jets?
Well, they're not going to throw him in, but you don't take a guy at number 3 and expect him not to be able to play. Like, he should be able to play in his first year. I just believe Sam's in the best situation because Josh McCown, it's been mentioned that he's a great teammate. He's been a great mentor to other quarterbacks. His knowledge of the game as a backup, is pretty much second to none unless you have a lot more experience at the position. But I like Sam. I like what the Jets are going to do. I still would like them to add another weapon or two to be able to help Sam Darnold make that transition.
And if you saw, their biggest weapon at the wide receiver position had a warrant issued for his arrest yesterday, a guy that burst onto the scene last year. So that's not good news for them. This is exactly what you should do. You shouldn't anoint the guy as your starting quarterback, but you shouldn't do what I saw the Houston Texans do last year when they drafted Deshaun Watson and say he's ineligible to start game 1. And then they put him in at halftime of game 1.
And they're like, I meant eligible.
Right. Allow it to be a competition, a true competition. If Darnold's good enough to win it, then he'll be the week 1 starter.
All right, let's talk some Steelers football. With Ben Roethlisberger planning to play 3 to 5 more years, he needs all his weapons. So when Pittsburgh traded wide receiver Martavis Bryant to the Raiders, Big Ben was, quote, caught off guard. CC, will the Steelers offense lose a step without Martavis Bryant?
I mean, he's hard to replace. He's got special ability, especially given we talk about wide receivers. We want to have 5 of them. They look like a basketball team. You want sizes, speed, and you want some difference between them. For what Antonio does and what Juju does, he was the perfect fit as far as being the 3rd guy. But he thinks he's a number 1 guy, so you got to get him out of that locker room. I believe he was poison to the rest of the team. Ben shouldn't be surprised based on his overall attitude the last 2 years and his inconsistency as far as being available for the team.
I understand why Ben might be bummed out by this because I do think he is a good fit. Antonio's arguably the best receiver in the league. Juju had an excellent rookie year, and Martavis has that straight line speed that adds another element to your offense. But why would Ben Roethlisberger be surprised by this? This is a guy who has been on the trade block for 2 years. He's going into the last year of his contract. Like, this was one of the least surprising moves during the NFL draft, that, of course, the Steelers were shopping Martavis Bryant. So I don't know if Ben actually was surprised or Ben just likes us talking about Ben, so he gave us another reason to talk about Ben. But I wasn't surprised by this. I understand why he'd be disappointed.
Martavius wasn't surprised.
No.
It was his understanding he was going to get traded this offseason. He wasn't participating in the offseason workouts.
All right, finally, it seems like every day Des Bryant loses another possible suitor. And according to Adam Schefter, most teams in the league would not even sign Dez at the league minimum. CC, take that by surprise. What does this mean for Dez Bryant?
League minimum,
not good. It's not good. It's not good. My man Adam Schefter, when he says something, there has to be a whole lot of truth around that. And I didn't believe the reports when Dez got released that afternoon. There was someone reporting on another network that I talked to 4 teams today. Oh, and there's plenty of interest out there for Dez Bryant. He's going to find a home, and he's going to find one immediately. It's one reason why I told my partner Nick Wright, I wouldn't give up that job in Dallas. Don't give up a good job, man. If you get a chance to stay there, try to work it out. Now, Dallas, they didn't extend that opportunity for him. So they had to release him, but I'm surprised that the number of teams wouldn't have interest in Dez, especially at the league minimum. Now, what that says is there must be more information out there on Dez besides his film that they're not happy with. And also, they're not willing to take the risk from an injury standpoint because he's a vested player. Vested meaning if he gets hurt doing some football-related thing, then they're on the hook for him, and his contract will be guaranteed for the year. But this is not a good thing for Dez Bryant and his camp when you have teams that are openly giving information that we have no interest in you at the minimum price. Like, we won't pay you $1 million, the minimum price. And that's the contract that's set up for veteran players to be able to extend their contract. Now, this is what we're going to go through a stage of free agency. That will change once we get to the summer. Guys start to get hurt. We'll see if their stance is still the same. I believe that the teams will change by then, and I do believe Dez will find a home.
Listen, Dez, I would be shocked still, even with this report, if Dez is not on a roster in week 1. Even if he was overpaid last year and he had a low catch rate and he doesn't get separation, when we talk about it's the best 1,600 football players in the world, there's about 120 wide receivers on active rosters. He's not the 130th best wide receiver in football. He might not be in the top 10 anymore. In fact, he's not. He'll be on a roster in week 1. But when you don't want Dez Bryant at the minimum, that's not just about football. Period, point blank. I don't want to cast aspersions on Dez's character, but I'm not the one doing it. The teams are. If you don't want Dez Bryant at a minimum contract, what you are saying is Dez Bryant, non-football, either in the locker room or when he's not in our facility, we cannot rely on him, and he has more trouble than it's worth. And this is a guy who I understand there were reports and rumors years ago about a very disturbing video that did or didn't exist. The video never came out, and since then, off the football field, we haven't heard anything about Dez. But the teams must have heard something. The teams must have reason to believe that when he leaves the cocoon of Dallas, with the structure he has in place there, with the, I don't want to say safety net, but with the support he has there, that this guy's going to be a live
maybe it's
wire.
not the kind of support every team is willing to do. To have someone be with him, basically 24 hours a day, for someone to be able to check in with him. And a lot of teams, most teams, don't do that.
And you don't do that for the 27th best player on your roster.
But we know that to be true because how many teams have we seen take chances on players who've had off-the-field problems?
Well, of course.
Who've had sideline issues, who've had a number of different non-football related situations that have sort of come upon them. They've taken chances for some reason, as Adam Schefter is reporting. None of the other teams in the league at this point want to even sign him for the league.
Dez Bryant at the league minimum, if the only thing we were concerned about is 60 minutes on Sunday, Dez Bryant at league minimum be one of the best bargains in football.
Sure.
No matter what you think of him as a player. No matter what you can say, he doesn't get separation. He can only run 3 routes. The dudes who make the league minimum, some of them can only run 1 route. Right. Some of them haven't gotten separation since high school. So this is not just about football. And Schefter, it's one interesting thing I'm going to add to it. When you mentioned the report from before that the Packers and some other teams were involved in it, that reporter is more known to have his contacts with agents. Schefter is more known to have his contacts with organizations.
Yeah.
And if organizations are telling Adam Schefter, we're not interested in him at any price, that is some next-level intel that is not showing up in his game.
And the thing that they added to it that I thought was very incriminating was, because the phone call goes like this: do you have some interest in Dez Bryant? And I've been like, no. Would you be interested in Dez Bryant at the league minimum? No. Or the quote like this: are you interested in Dez Bryant? No, we're not interested in, even if he was at the league minimum.
Right.
There's only two ways that conversation goes.
I think it's more likely the second, because it'd be an odd question for Schefter to ask. When we're hearing about Dez turning down contracts, it wouldn't logically for Schefter to be like, what about at the league minimum? No one's talking about Dez at the league minimum.
Right.
Feels like it's something that's offered up. We wouldn't even want him for free, essentially.
But it should, fans should know, though, it's been reported that he did turn down a multi-year deal in Baltimore for $7 million, about the same deal that they gave Crabtree. $7 million a year, $21 million.
Any shot he's regretting that right now?
And I think there's a lot of things right now that are bouncing around Dez's head about the way he's handled this stage of his career that maybe he'd like back. Or maybe he just thinks everyone's wrong.
All right, let's switch gears for a second and talk about what's coming up tonight. Cavs-Raptors coming off what LeBron James called his worst game of the season, the one where he had a triple-double and the team won. The LeBrons are back at it tonight in Toronto for Game 2. The Cavs can't expect Toronto to shoot 20% in the fourth quarter again. They can't expect them to miss the final 11 shots in regulation again, and they certainly can't expect them to lose again. Nick, what are we to expect tonight in Game 2?
Listen, I think Cavs are going to win. I think that LeBron is going to, while getting teammates involved again, while trying to be a distributor, what LeBron is going to do more in Game 2 than he did in Game 1 is try to get to the basket. Like, LeBron took 30 shots, but not a lot of those were at the rim. He settled a lot. He took a bunch of threes, particularly was it the fourth quarter. He shot 5 of them. It seemed, I think he was somewhat rattled from missing 3 of his first 4 free throws, and it made him less aggressive going to the rim. I also think LeBron knows we can put our foot on their throat right now. We can de facto win. If you win the first 2 on the road, man, that's a hard one to come back from. So I think you're going to see, while still distributing, a more aggressive LeBron James, and I do not think Toronto has an answer for that.
Critical game for Toronto, not just for the fear factor going down 0-2, losing the decisive home court advantage, but what is Toronto's record in Cleveland?
Oh, well, not just in Cleveland. LeBron James at home against the Raptors has won 28 of his last 29. That includes the stint in Miami. So the Raptors on the road against LeBron, 1-28 in the last 14 years.
Now, I don't know if the Raptors are counting the Heat, but I know they're counting when LeBron was in Cleveland. And it's not a place they're very, very comfortable at. They haven't played there of recent. All right, there's no good memories from the coaching staff through their star players believing that they can win in Cleveland. So for me, I believe Toronto comes out. This is the most important game of the season for them, because they don't win this one, their season is over with. So I believe Toronto does play their best basketball game. A couple things to LeBron. Why did LeBron settle? The number one reason why LeBron settled in game number 1 was because LeBron was tired. All right? He was tired. He talked about him being burnt the game before, but you could see. Second reason why he settled on the jump shot is because Toronto played so much of the game with an illegal defense. When LeBron had the ball, they had an extra 2 guys in the paint.
Yeah.
The refs didn't call it the whole game. And the third thing was they let the rookie hand check LeBron with 2 hands when LeBron was facing the basket. So when you watch tonight's game, if LeBron's able to get to the basket, it will be because he does have more energy after 2 days. But watch the other opposing players and see where they're at. If they're in the lane, LeBron's not going to try to go in there. He will settle for more jump shots.
And just real quick to answer I guess I slightly misunderstood your question. The Raptors have not won a game in Cleveland, playoffs or regular season, since early in 2014. So early in the first year LeBron went back to Cleveland. So I think it's 11 straight games they've lost there. But in the playoffs, how about this? The Cavs have won 4 straight games in Toronto in the postseason, and 7 straight games overall against Toronto in the postseason.
It's not that Toronto's letting the Cavs get in their head. Toronto's letting LeBron get in their head. And Toronto has to remember that they had an incredible offense throughout this season. They have to remember that they have an incredible bench that they can rely on. They have to remember that they have their own game plan and their own game. And I think what happened in the fourth quarter of that last game was they stopped and they're like, oh, my God, we're playing the guy that beats us all the time. Shots weren't falling. And I don't know if it was that cut and dry. But let's go back to the Cavs and what they're doing tonight. Ty Lue came out and said that Kevin Love is going to go ahead. Kevin Love, who's been struggling mightily over the course of the last, I don't know, pick however many games you want.
The whole playoffs.
Is going to start at center again tonight. He does have playoff experience. He just doesn't have the success so far in the last couple of weeks.
And that also means Tristan Thompson coming off the bench again.
Correct.
Tristan Thompson won't be in the starting lineup.
I believe Ty Lue and them are wrong in this. I would start Tristan Thompson. He's a native Canadian. He's playing nothing on pride. We've talked about what he's going through off the court. His only oasis in life is on the court. He's given them a boost the last 3 times they've put him in the game. When you're going back to your home country like that, given what he's going through, you could see that. They wouldn't have won game 1 without him. If I would start him because the Cavs got dominated in the paint. No, they are not going to miss that many shots to Raptors at point-blank range. But Kevin Love is not a center. I believe they're going to need Tristan Thompson. Now, forget this series. They're going to need him. If they got championship aspirations, they need a center, and Kevin Love is not that.
The only reason I understand what they're doing, even if it's not what I would do, because when I want Tristan Thompson in the game when Jonas Valanciunas is in the game. Jonas Valanciunas is going to start for Toronto, so for that reason, I would want to start Tristan Thompson. The reason that I believe, and if you look at the quotes, it makes sense that they are starting Kevin Love at center, is they think Kevin Love is more likely to get off offensively as a 5 than a 4 because Valanciunas will be in the game. Valanciunas can't guard him on the perimeter.
Yeah, but if he was a legitimate all-star, that wouldn't matter.
Agreed.
Yeah,
of course.
no, you're right.
It's not like the Raptors have some great number 4 man on defense to worry about. I totally agree. But I think they are trying through hook or crook to get some version of Kevin Love back before they get to the conference finals, where they will need, if they are playing Philly, to be firing on all cylinders.
But if he does play center, this is last series. Because if Philadelphia gets through, Joel Embiid will eat him whole.
Right.
All right? So they might as well go ahead and make the switch now.
Joel Embiid's so hungry all the time. Coming up, the Baltimore Ravens already have a plan for their newly drafted quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Wait till you hear what it is. That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. And we welcome in former NFL head coach Eric Mangini to our conversation, our inane, ridiculous conversation in the break over who could run the fastest. It's like
Jenna
a bunch of
likes challenging random humans to races, including our, I would say, less than peak physically fit Sam Pepper.
I didn't say that.
She wanted you. I can beat you in a race. I can beat you in a race.
Not how that happened.
Okay, well, then I missed it. I apologize. I think you could beat Pep in a race.
Well, thank you.
I think you could run backwards
it
and
means
beat
a lot
Pep.
to our audience.
We should
No problem.
really set the distance, though. Are we doing hundreds? Are we doing 50s? Are we doing 40s?
And what did I say? I said pick
Anything?
a yardage.
Yeah,
and I can do
pick
it.
a
Just
yardage.
don't tell me how many
She said
feet.
pick a yardage, any paycheck, she's into it. Absolutely.
The show happens to be based on what I did after that. Okay? That's the way the show was put together. Okay?
That's correct.
It wouldn't be a long show if we talked about what Nick has done or what Jenna has not
Leave
done.
me out of this. I don't talk about any feats of athleticism. We did that in a test
But the
show once. It
does
didn't
have
go well for me.
It has those clips like going viral and. So
That's
maybe
where
that's
we're
what
going to be.
that
That's
is.
where I
It's
live.
like
I
that
live in the little 30-second going viral.
That space.
Coach.
Charlie Dixon.
Coach, I'm sorry. You have to be a part of all our run race challenges. The NFL trend this offseason has been this, Coach Mangini. Draft a top-tier quarterback, then tell the world he's third on your depth chart behind a mediocre starter and a backup we've never heard of. But the Ravens are playing this one differently. Yes, they are. They drafted Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson will reportedly play Week 1. Baltimore is planning on designing plays for their first-round pick right off the bat. Coach, how would you use Lamar Jackson if you were the Ravens?
Well, I think they're going to use him similar to the way that Greg has used quarterbacks in the past. Greg Roman, his experience in San Francisco.
That's a good
and it's going to be a change of pace guy. And that's difficult for defenses because you've got to get ready for the starter and what Joe Flacco brings, which is very traditional. And then you put a guy like Lamar Jackson in, and even if it's a set of 5 or 10 plays with enough variety that during the course of the week, you've got to spend significant amount of time defensively getting ready for it. And even if he goes in for one play, you've still got to spend those reps, and it means it's less reps that you can spend on the starter. So there's real value in that. And I think that the other thing it does is give him some experience, and it gives him a package if Flacco gets hurt where he's comfortable right away.
Does it say something about Lamar Jackson, or does it say something about Joe Flacco? Because all these other teams we've talked about, none of these guys are, except maybe Sam Darnold competing with Josh McCown.
Listen, I would say none of these guys have such drastically different skill sets than who the starter is. Like so let's take what's going on in Arizona. Sam Bradford and Josh Rosen. When you're talking about what it creates for the defense, tell me if I'm getting this right. If the defense is like, oh, Josh Rosen might come in for a series, their game planning is not drastically different than if they're preparing for Sam Bradford.
No, they still play man-to-man, still play zone.
Right.
It's not going to force them to prepare that much differently. So one of the things that we have in the National Football League that we take advantage of, and the reason why New England is so successful, because one thing that we have in common, and it doesn't change, is time. How much time you have to prepare for the opposition. So if you can make, what Coach said, if you can make the opposition spend some of their allotted, because they're not getting more time than you, but if you can make them dice up the time, that no, they can't spend 75% of their time on Flacco. That now they got to be able to be like, especially the first month of the season. So now all those other teams, they got to really watch the preseason to see what they show, what Baltimore shows Lamar in, and then once we start the season, man, Baltimore has a huge advantage in that we know that we have this weapon, we know that we have this change of pace, and we're going to force you to spend a bunch of time to prepare for Lamar Jackson. I believe it's a smart thing to do, but it's also, I like the fact that you have a better chance of being successful if you come up with a plan before you draft the player. 99% of the players in the league are system players. Lamar Jackson needs a system that is different than Joe Flacco for him to be successful. So I love what Baltimore has, when they had a plan in mind when they drafted the talent.
And I remember with Alex Smith when they'd bring Colin Kaepernick even in for a play or two initially, and Colin would change things, or he'd make it a play that put a ton of pressure on the defense, and then everybody had to get ready for that. And when I drafted Brad Smith, or you were dealing with the Wildcat, the thought was easy for us, hard for them. And if you can take a guy like Lamar and show that he's not just a running quarterback, but he can actually throw the ball, it changes things, too, defensively, because you can't just load up the box. You've got to actually honor the passing game, where with Tim Tebow, you could load up the box and stop the run. With Lamar Jackson, he has the ability to do both. He's radically different than Flacco, and it eats up time, reps, effort, energy from your opponent.
And like we've talked about this from the angle for the Ravens as an organization and for their opponents. But for Lamar, the other thing that's different about Lamar than the 4 quarterbacks taken ahead of him, all 4 of those quarterbacks right now legitimately believe, I can win this starting job. I can be the week 1 starter. That gives it whatever motivation they have, that's extra motivation. I can be the week 1 starter my rookie season. Lamar's the one guy drafted of the 5 first-rounders where the team has a quarterback in place they've won a Super Bowl with, they feel very comfortable with. Lamar realistically can't be the week 1 starter, so barring an injury. So what this does is it gives him extra, I don't want to even call it motivation, but it gives him more incentive and more something to be excited for. Like, I'm not guaranteed to just sit on the sideline week 1. They have a plan for me. And we talked about this over the weekend, have to think about the organization that drafted Lamar Jackson. They drafted before, a long time ago, we forget about it. They drafted Tyrod Taylor. Yep. He sat behind Joe Flacco for 4 years and developed. I think Ozzie Newsome and that organization were ready to transition to a different era of quarterback, not as traditional statue in the pocket like Flacco. The problem was Flacco had then won a Super Bowl and played so well that
coming off a terrible year that maybe now the offense is ready to go in a different direction.
The thing that I like what he said is I have someone there to support the talent, because even Baltimore, they draft a guy, they draft Lamar Jackson as a running quarterback, but if they don't have Greg Roman there, I'm not as comfortable. Because Greg Roman has chapter and volume of NFL film that he can show Lamar and be like, I got a package for you. Here it is. I can unveil it. This is how we did it before. Now, he's a better thrower of the football than Cap was early, a little more elusive than Cap was. So I'm very interested to see what they're going to do there in Baltimore, Coach.
And my question is, what's the real goal of the coaching staff? Is this goal just to put pressure on the defense? Or is this a goal to say, hey, this guy can really play, and this guy should be our starting quarterback, But sometimes with ownership and people in the front office, you've got to show them before you can make a decision like that, especially when you've got a guy like they do with Joe Flacco. Is the goal to put a bunch of pressure on Joe Flacco saying, you're not performing the way we expect you to do, they expect you, you're not doing the things we think you should be doing. Here's a nice, healthy dose of pressure. So deal with that and either perform better or be prepared to be replaced.
Do you think that with Greg Roman being their offensive coordinator there, do you think this is what they had in mind before the draft, before they knew Lamar Jackson was coming when they signed RG3? That the idea of signing RG3 was to maybe get him on the field in these types of packages to give the different change of pace? Is that because it is interesting to me that this is the team that signed RG3. Now they ended up moving up to go get Lamar, so RG3 we think has been bumped down on the depth chart. But do you think that's what they had in mind with that move?
Well, they also were one of the few teams that were going down the road with Colin Kaepernick, too. So, yeah, I do think this is what they have in mind. This is what they want to move towards. In terms of Joe Flacco, though, he has performed at a very high level. He's only missed he's only had one losing season and no losing season when he was actually the starter for full 16 games and won the Super Bowl. So it would be hard for me as ownership to say it's time to move on and radically change
This
what
is
we
the
do.
last year that Flacco has guaranteed money in his contract, and that's significant.
All right, Coach, we'll see you a little bit later on the show. Stick around, though. Coming up next, the Jazz strike back. We'll show you how they did it next on First Things First. Okay, let's talk about things other than my head. I don't know what else there is to say about LeBron James. I really don't, and I'm the one who wrote this script. It doesn't matter who he's playing. It doesn't matter who he's playing with. Role players, no role players, home, away. Last night, Game 2 against the top-ranked Raptors, coming off what he called his worst game of the season. LeBron James pours in 43 points and 14 assists in the easy win. Easy because guess who else showed up last night? Kevin Love. Kevin Love had 31 points after we all basically had him dead and buried. Cavs are up 2-0 in this series. Here is LeBron James after the game.
Well, I pretty much know that a scouting report on me is going to be to dare me to shoot jump shots, keep me out of the paint, not allow me to go to the free throw line. So over the course of my career, I've just tried to put a lot of work into other facets of the game to try to, neutralize that game plan. I worked extremely hard on my jump shot, and in a few years after my first year in Miami, I started to work on my post game and ways I can score in the post and be just very efficient. And, tonight was just a byproduct of that.
We're going to get to LeBron and everything, but just FYI, I thought that thing that LeBron was wearing was a sling for his arm, and I leaned over and said, is he okay?
No,
Nick goes, that's a bag.
That's a bag, yeah. He's been wearing it to a lot of the post-game press conferences.
I didn't realize that. All right, let's move fashion forward, if we will. Cece, how are LeBron and the Cavs able to just dominate the Raptors, besides the mental edge that they just somehow seem to have over this team?
Well, the biggest question mark coming into this series was what would the role players do?
Right.
And in different games, game number one, the collective, the role players, Tristan, Jeff Green, those players, they showed up. JR, they showed up big in game number one. In game number two, the star showed up, and that's Kevin Love. LeBron finally got the all-star that all of us have come accustomed to seeing. Now, we didn't expect Kevin Love when Kyrie left for his game to go backwards. We thought, and there were portions during the regular season, we thought Kevin Love, this was the best basketball that he had played since coming over from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, he had went through recently, especially in the playoffs, the worst stint of basketball that we saw him. He came out of it last night. And LeBron said in the press conference that Kevin Love had a look on his face as if he was in the zone and he was demanding the basketball. So they went to a lot of sets that where LeBron and Kevin Love were on the same side of the court, where LeBron knew they weren't going to double team him. They did a lot like Boston did in the first game against Philadelphia, where they passed the ball till they got the matchup they wanted, which was Kevin Love, and they just kept force feeding. And Kevin Love took advantage of that. And then LeBron, after seeing that, and then the game kind of got a level set, the energy initially he knew would be there. Toronto played a good first half. Then LeBron decided to take over. And at that point, he played a game, and his shot making, I would say, was either one of the top three games as far as the difficult shots that he decided to take and the ones that he made. I mean, it was a brilliant performance from him offensively. So Kevin Love, this would be game 2 would be the game that was forced upon. Kevin Love, because people had given up on him, but his teammates and a few other people, they hung in there with him. They kept him at the 5 starting lineup. I believe Ty Lue, giving him that overall confidence.
He didn't want to be there.
What his teammates told him. And I was telling Nick last night on the phone, man, Kevin Love's teammates like him. Kevin Love is a good guy. He works hard, fits his role within the team very well. And LeBron mentioned it later on, what Dwayne Casey in his role as a defensive assistant for Dallas, it forced LeBron in to be able to make these type of shots because that bad performance that he had in the finals against the Dallas Mavericks.
Listen, your points on Kevin Love are well-founded. When we were on the phone last night, one of the funny things you said is the Raptors playing so bad, they're going to make the Cavs a contender again, getting everyone back on track, getting the Kevin Love back on track, getting everyone back on track. But while the Kevin Love part of this was important for the Cavs long-term, important for the Cavs in the next round, very important for the Cavs no matter who they will end up playing in the NBA Finals, the story of this game turned into what LeBron did in quarters 2 through 4. Because after quarter 1, didn't look like we were going to have any type of special LeBron game. He waited. Kevin Love took 8 shots in the first quarter.
Was that intentional? Do you think that was LeBron's game plan? Come in, get the other guys involved before I do anything?
Absolutely intentional. And then LeBron realized, oh, my shot's falling tonight. And when that happens, good luck, good night, no matter who you're playing, much less if you're playing a team that you have beaten 5 consecutive road playoff games. 5 times in a row in their building in the playoffs. You've won 8 in a row in the playoffs overall. And so what LeBron was doing last night, to steal a line from one of my favorite writers, Josh Eberly of Hoop Mag, he was Kobe's shot selection with Shaq efficiency numbers. He was taking absurd shots, still shooting close to 70% for the game. And so what we had last night was a guy who somehow is at the peak of his powers, controlling a playoff game, unlike, and I can't believe I'm saying this, we've ever seen him control a playoff game. LeBron has never contributed more points as far as scoring and assists in a playoff game in his NBA career. What about on the defensive end? Guys guarded by LeBron James last night shot 11% from the field. He tied his career high in playoff assists. He was 2 points off his career high in playoff points. If we just drop the threshold, he had 43, 8, 14. If we drop the threshold to 40, 8, and 11, make it a little more rounder numbers, a little easier. Show America the full list of times that's happened in playoff history. Take LeBron out of it. It happens once every 25 years. Jerry West in 69, Drexler in 92, Russ last year. LeBron has done it in 2015, in 2016, in 2017, and last night. The total full control of the basketball game, unlike anything we've seen from him, which means unlike anything we've seen from almost anyone ever.
And aren't we tired of sort of asking how he's doing this at age 33, at this deep into his career, without help basically from everyone else around him, how he continues to do? We're almost tired of asking because we expect it of him. Because on the nights when he has 30 points, we're like, oh, it was an off night for LeBron James.
Yeah, well, he's never been able to shoot the basketball as well as he's shooting the basketball. He's never handled the basketball because these things, the segment is how these things got forced. They forced Kevin Love into playing well. Dwayne Casey, what he did to LeBron in Dallas, forced LeBron to have the arsenal that he has now. When Kyrie Irving forced his way out of Cleveland, it forced LeBron to have to handle the ball more. So you're able to see some different things. But it's allowed us to see the best basketball because he's called on more to do that. He dribbles the ball more. He's got to rebound more. But his overall shooting efficiency, and he talked about this offseason, he had some type of injury to his elbow that he believed helped him correct something in his shot, that he believed his shot was better than ever. It's a confidence factor. Man, it's rare to be able to see this. Like, I saw Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan got done, we had conversations a lot like this. Like, man, I don't think I'll ever see another basketball player like this. And now we're having the same conversation with LeBron James.
And I'm going to make one request to whether it's NBA Twitter or folks on television or on the radio, anyone talking about the NBA. Do not call the Raptors today the baby dinosaurs. Do not talk about how this team was overrated or overstated. That's not what this is. This was a 59-win team that buttoned up all their deficiencies, that got themselves the best bench in the league, that has an all-NBA caliber shooting guard and a fringe all-NBA caliber point guard who had home court advantage, fully healthy after winning 59 games. This is not about them. It's about that guy right there. Yeah. They can't beat him. They have never been able to beat him, and they will be added to the NBA graveyard of teams in the East, the yeah buts. Just the way the Big Three era with the Celtics ended. Just like the Derrick Rose era with Chicago never got off the ground. Just like the 60-win Hawks went into tank mode 2 years after winning 60 wins. Just like the Paul George, Roy Hibbert, Indiana Pacers. Now the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, Toronto Raptors. A whole bunch of, oh, they could have done it. Yeah, they could have, but they had to go through this guy. And nobody's been able to go through this guy in this conference for a decade.
And Cece, you touched on it, and we will touch on it more, the role that Kevin Love played last night and the decision Ty Lue made to play Kevin Love at the 5, which was obviously turned out to be a very good one. We'll get to all of that in just a bit, but coming up, was last night more about the Celtics being good or the Sixers being bad? Did you hear what happened in this game?
Man.
Next on First Things First. On to the Sixers and Celtics, Jaylen Brown. Steal, dunk, and check out Gucci Mane rocking his jersey courtside.
This is just flat-out hustle right here. This was a key play in the game. Jaylen Brown had just come into the game. I don't know what Sarge was thinking about.
I totally agree with you, see. And how do you do this with a sore hamstring? Like, you got to this was very early in the game. I think the score was like 11-5. And as soon as it happened, I texted our producers that do the video and say, if the Celtics win, I want this on the show. Like, that was, you saw the hustle of the Celtics. You saw Jaylen Brown's athleticism. Man.
Jason Tatum throwing it down.
Not only was this good, this was critical. This was a tight point in the game. And the game could have gone either way. The Celtics decided to run late in the game, got them some easy buckets, and Tatum was spectacular.
Amazing. Jason Tatum, he had a great stat line. And his stat line does not do him justice. Like the 21 points on 50% shooting, but it felt like every basket was critical that he made.
All right, sticking with the Sixers and Celtics, not sure anyone but a true diehard Celtics fan could have predicted what happened last night in Game 2. You know, the part about a depleted and injured Celtics team beating a stacked Sixers team last night. You know, the part about Ben Simmons scoring just 1 point the entire game. You know, the part about the Celtics winning, 108-103 to take a 2-0 lead in this series. Here is Ben Simmons on his off night.
I think mentally I was thinking too much, overthinking the plays, and wasn't just out there flowing and playing the way I play, which is free. And I think, you know, obviously they have a game plan. I know what that game plan is. I got to play my game.
Coach was saying whoever bring the fight to one another is going, and whoever the tougher team is going to win. And they definitely punched us in the mouth at the beginning of the game, and we just had to bounce back and get things together.
I'm going to have bad games. It happens. Obviously, it's not the perfect timing, but you head home now. We got 2 home games that we need to take care of and handle business. We have the team to do it, the coaching stuff, and just got to go do it.
It's quite an outfit that Terry Rozier was sporting last night. It was a little throwback and a little throw forward. All right, Nick, was last night more about the Celtics overachieving or the Sixers underachieving?
I want to give all the credit in the world to Boston. I thought Kenny Smith on TV last night got it exactly right. I've never seen a team where the players seem more interchangeable, where you lose Kyrie Irving and Terry Rozier gives you 95% of the production Kyrie Irving was giving you. I've never seen that, where you lose Gordon Hayward 7 minutes into the year, and by the end of the year, Jason Tatum is giving you everything you could have hoped Gordon Hayward would be giving you. That when Marcus Smart went down earlier, Semi Ojeleye steps in and plays that role as well as he can. So Boston deserves an enormous amount of credit from the coach, the GM, to the coach, to the players who have to go out there and execute, and they're undefeated at home these playoffs, so maybe we should have seen them starting off this series well. But the other side of this is, and this is the concern for Philly, is the point C's been making all year long, which is Ben Simmons, as great as he is, he's going to need to learn how to shoot. Well, Boston...
Oh, no, that's not important in basketball. Oh, no, that's not important.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think anyone's ever doubted that shooting is important, but we saw Ben Simmons over the course of the year be extraordinary, have an all-time rookie campaign despite not being able to shoot. Well, Boston has solved him thus far in these playoffs. They were minus 22 with Simmons on the court in a game that was only a 5-point game. So, like, the plus-minuses can be misleading at times. But when the game's only decided by 5 points, and one guy on your team, when he's out there he played 30 minutes last night, you're outscored by 23, pardon me, not 22. Like, that's the story of the game. The offense ground to a halt when Ben Simmons was out there because of the way the Celtics are guarding him, and that is a concern for Philly no matter where these games are going to be played.
Yeah, you can't concentrate on the individual during the season. Collectively, a team is trying to win one game. The scouting report is very, very limited. That's why the playoffs is totally different. So for me, this was the first time that Philadelphia looked like a young team. Not just because of the result of the game, not because the way Ben did, but they had a big lead, and they tried to play at a pace. That's the only way the Celtics can get back in the game, is if Philadelphia keeps shooting hurried up, rushed threes. And that's what they did to end the first half. Yep. Like, they just kept shooting shots, just unabated, not even realizing at some point you have to realize what the game is, the pace of the game. And they didn't think about that. That was the first time this playoff that I've seen that said, wow, that's a young team right there. There was another instance where the coach didn't call a timeout when the Celtics had a run. He thought they would play themselves out of it. But they're a young basketball team. Young basketball teams, it's hard for them to be able to play themselves out of a slump. So those two instances right there, and Ben Simmons and his inability to be able to get the ball in the bucket or play the type of game that they're playing, because Boston has decided this. He can shoot as many jump shots as he wants to.
Right.
We're going to overplay the three-point line for the other players. Now, if he can dribble past me, which they're playing great positional defense on him, it becomes an issue. Now, you're talking about Ben Simmons can't shoot. He can't shoot outside of 5 feet.
Right.
And that is real. And you could see that in last night's game.
Just real quick to CeCe's point about the run, Philly had a 22-point lead with 6 minutes left in the second quarter. By 3 minutes left in the third quarter, so 15 game minutes, Boston was up 8. It was a 48-18 run. So it's not just coming back from 22. It's erasing that deficit instantly. It is a game that Philly should have been in firm control of at halftime. It was, I think, a 4 or 5 point game at the half, and then Boston had taken an 8-point lead.
And they brought the crowd back in.
Right, they got the crowd back in, absolutely. I mean, they instantly erased what should have been. You're not supposed to blow 22-point leads in the playoffs, even if you have them early in the game.
I want to ask you guys about Sixers head coach Brett Brown and his decision to put Ben Simmons back in when clearly T.J. McConnell was playing great and was far more productive for this Sixers team. Ben Simmons was clearly not playing great. And he puts him back in the fourth quarter, and we saw what happened. Do you have any issue, either of you, with that?
No, Jim, that's a legitimate question. But P.J. McConnell's P.J. McConnell. Like, if you, what's his name?
T.J.
Yeah, when he gets good,
you'll get
I'll put a P.J. on it.
You'll put a T.J. on it.
All
I got you. Go
because
ahead.
there were times during the year you would question, man, why is he in the lineup? Why are they utilizing him? I thought Fultz would
take
build
his spot.
I thought he would play more in. Now, he did have a burst. He had 5 minutes where he was unconscious. He did help them out. Got rebounds, got 2 quick buckets. But the reality is, Ben's been a star all year. He's a frontline player. He's your franchise. He's one of the faces of your franchise. He's a 6'10" point guard. So, yeah, in real time, you can sit there and nitpick and be like, oh, yeah, but if you've been watching the 76ers and you know who Ben Simmons and what he can do, and you know what PJ can do.
But TJ was plus 16 last night.
Listen, absolutely. And Simmons,
But the totality of it, Jenna.
Right,
like,
just real quick, they kept him out as long as they could have. Ben Simmons went out midway through the third, did not go back in midway through the fourth. That is not your regular rotation. He was supposed to go out midway through the third, come back beginning of the fourth. So they gave TJ as much time as they could have. But you cannot do the process and then in a critical moment keep your rookie off the court. No. He's got to go through this. Either for good or for bad, he needs to be out there. It is more important for Philadelphia long term that Ben Simmons either figure it out or deal with the fact that he couldn't. because you don't draft injured players because you're waiting on a process. You don't draft Euros that aren't going to come over for a few years like Saric. Have Embiid play 30 games in 3 years. Have Simmons sit out the end of last year when he didn't have to. And then all of a sudden disregard when you're in the crucible of the moment and say T.J. McConnell gives us a better chance. And T.J. McConnell was playing so over his skis. I think Brett Brown felt like we've stolen as many minutes as we can. If we're going to win this game, Ben Simmons is going to have to show up. He just couldn't show up.
All right, we'll take a break. Coming up, LeBron James knows who deserves credit for his great night. The answer might surprise you because it doesn't rhyme with LeBron. That's next on First and Third. Time now for
Learn to shoot.
stories to start your morning. Start with Tiger Woods. Haven't talked about him in a beat. Tiger made his return to Quail Hollow yesterday for the first time since 2012. Tiger finished round one of the Wells Fargo Championship with an even par 71, 6 shots off the lead. CC, what do you think? You think we'll see Tiger in contention on Sunday?
We'd like to. This golf course is awful tough. It's not one of his favorites. It's a popular tournament. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a golf course I've played myself, played in the Pro-Am a number of years ago. Tiger, what he didn't have, hit his driver well, hit his irons well. He's got a new set of tailor-made irons. He had his woods tailor-made. Now he's got his whole bag matched up now with tailor-made products. Couldn't putt the ball. Couldn't get shortcuts. Couldn't putt the ball. He should have. He hit the ball well enough. He should have been 2 or 3 under par.
There's 2 of the final 4 holes he had an opportunity for birdie and blew it with a bad putt. And he had a 15-footer for a birdie that ended up as a 3-putt bogey. Like, this is what we have seen with Tiger is it's yet to put it all together in one awesome round. Yesterday was, outside of putting, about as well as we've seen him play on this comeback. Earlier in the comeback, it was the putting had been saving him and so the iron and the woods were good, but the putting just wasn't there yesterday.
Hey, the Knicks have reportedly hired David Fizdale to be their 11th head coach. 11th head coach since the 2001-2002 season. Fizdale will look to turn around a Knicks team that went 29-53 last year. Nick, Fizz wanted this job, waited for the offer. How much of an uphill climb does he have ahead of him now?
Listen, they have the most important thing to have when you take a job, a superstar, or a potential superstar, I should say. Kristaps isn't there yet, but the trajectory, assuming he comes back healthy, is that of a superstar. Also, the Knicks, they have needed for quite some time a really good coach. I think Fizz is a really good coach. I think Fizz learned under the right people in Miami. I think Fizz got a short end of the stick in Memphis. I think he will do a good job there. I think the Knicks I think this is better than hiring Mark Jackson or Jeff Van Gundy. I think they hired the right guy. The question is, will they be able to get someone to pair up with Kristaps in what is all of a sudden a very competitive Eastern Conference?
Yeah, I'm excited about what the Knicks management did with David Fizdale. But also now, let's pump the brakes. Let's just be a little patient because their star player they do have a star in Porzingis. He's out. And he might miss a great portion of the 2019 season. Now, might not even come back, depending on how the team is doing. They have to be able to get another star, but you need someone like Fizdale to be able to get that started. And I believe he has a lot of respect with the players and them trying to draw a big-time free agent.
Absolutely.
Plus, he's got a great nickname, so.
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct as well.
Fizz. Finally, the Cavs took down the Raptors last night to go up 2-0 in this series. LeBron James looked unstoppable, finishing with 43 points, 14 assists. And according to LeBron, Raptors head coach Dwayne Casey, who was the defensive guru when the Dallas Mavericks beat LeBron's Heat in the 2011 finals, might be the reason why. Listen.
I wasn't that good of a player in that series. I wasn't a complete basketball player. Dwayne Casey drew up a game plan against me in that 11 series in the finals when I played Dallas to take away things that I was very good at and to try to make me do things that I wasn't very good at. So he's part of the reason why I am who I am today.
It's interesting. Haven't heard that before. CC, what were your reactions to these comments?
I think it's awesome. You need people like Casey that come in your path so that you are pushed to a level. And I like the fact that LeBron is so aware.
Yeah.
He's aware of where he was. He's aware of who he is. He's aware of what he needs to do. And he's improved his game at all aspects. You go back to high school. He's sitting there, he's talking, he's doing a high school interview on ESPN.
Yeah.
They asked him, what do you need to work on? Oh, I need to work on my jump shot. I got to make sure that my jumper is a lot better, at the next level. So he has done this maintenance on his game, and I love the fact that he's not walking away from the low point in his career. And even though he had that great game last night, he realized how he got to that point. And it was going through that low moment that he had that awful series against the Dallas Mavericks in the finals.
And it was a great question, and it was a thoughtful, great answer, because a lot of people look at LeBron's career as if the fork in the road was the decision to go to Miami. I've never thought that. I've thought, at least with hindsight, the fork in the road was that Dallas series once he was in Miami. Because when he walked off the court after the Dallas coaching staff, as he talks about it there, made him do things he was not comfortable doing and not yet equipped to do. Up to that point in his career, he had won 2 MVPs. He'd had the 48 special game against Detroit. He was already considered the best basketball player in the world. But he had glaring holes in his game. He had, against the coach's wishes, his own coaches, refused to learn how to post up. He had not gotten comfortable doing the things that now he is so great at. And when he walked off the court from that moment forward, and I've said this time and again on this show, I believe what he's put together is the greatest 7-year stretch, consecutive years, in the history of the sport. Since he walked off the court in that series, we talked about it last week, he's played 13 elimination games. He's 10-3 with 12 30-point games. The one non-30-point game was a triple-double in Game 7 of the finals. He has added a new wrinkle to his game every single year. He is somehow in better shape now than he ever was, and it's about that series. I think LeBron James, maybe his statistical or his finals record is better if they win that series against the Mavs, but I don't think he's a better player. I think it's better. It was better for LeBron to have that moment.
I disagree with you, because he was going to have some other moments. LeBron has always been about improving. It was going to be that moment, or it was going to be another moment, because there was other moments that improved his game. Even after they won the championship, that's when he went to the low post. It wasn't out of defeat. The greatest players, they always challenge themselves, and they utilize defeat as one of the challenges. But they don't have to have defeat in their life to be able to do that. That's what makes them great.
Go ahead, Jenna.
No, I was just going to say, I'm finding what's going on in this postseason very refreshing. I'm learning more about LeBron. He seemingly wants to talk about how he's gotten here because more people want to ask him about it. So I didn't know that. I would never, I just didn't know that he was so aware, like you said, of where he is in his career now, of where he was, and how much he has changed his game. Usually when you're that talented, you don't have the wherewithal to want to change your game, to take it to the next level.
And typically guys change their game because their body has demanded it.
Exactly.
So, like, when Michael Jordan came back from his first retirement, after he won the 3 rings, then he went to go play baseball, when he came back, he was still far and away the best basketball player in the world. But he was no longer the best clear-cut, raw athlete in the NBA. He was older, he'd been away from the game. And he came back with that mid-range turnaround that was not a huge part of his game before, and it became the signature of his game for those final 3 rings. He evolved because his body demanded it. LeBron is showing us that athletically, he is, 90% of what he was 10 years ago. That as far as stamina, he is as good as he's ever been. And he is now just adding new layers to what he can do. I do think I don't want to say turning point, but I think the biggest moment was not just defeat, but a defeat that was, that defeat was on him. It's one thing to lose. It's another thing to lose because you, in Game 5, have 8 points in the finals, when the moment's too big for you, and when your teammates step up and you don't. That level of
I think the biggest thing for LeBron was when he left Cleveland. And he faced all the criticism, and at that point he realized after a year where people tried to make him the villain, he tried to be the villain, he came back and said, you know something, I'm not that guy. I'm not going to be that guy. That was before Dallas. That's what I believe changed his career.
All right, we're going to change gears here a little bit, talk about the NFL. Antonio Callaway was drafted in the 4th round by the Cleveland Browns after a tumultuous 3 years at the University of Florida. However, division rival Antonio Brown has decided to take a mentorship role in his life. Both wide receivers are from the Miami area, and Callaway reportedly reached out to Brown for advice on how to transition to the NFL. Speaking of wide receivers and mentoring and some of that other stuff, CC, how beneficial can Brown's mentorship be for Callaway?
It's tremendous. And because a lot of young players, too, when they have some type of adversity, they've been through what Antonio's been through, not Brown, Callaway, what he's been through as far as the drug usage, the suspensions, the disappointment in college. It's hard for people outside for them to trust him. And I know he'll trust Antonio Brown. They have some of the same stories as far as where they came from. Callaway grew up in Miami, went to Booker T. Washington, went on to take his talent to Gainesville in the state of Florida. Now, Antonio, he wasn't heavily recruited. Undersized. You know, he went to the MAC conference to cut his teeth. Wasn't a high-round draft pick. So the Cleveland Browns, they let you know. When they spend the 4th round, you know, I say this all the time with reference to the draft. I was first-team All-American. I went in the 4th round. So the Cleveland Browns, they must feel an awful lot about Callaway as far as what he can do. And Antonio Brown is doing what a lot of players have done in the league, and that's a brotherhood. We're going to look after the younger players. We're going to try to expose them to things so that they can walk down the path that we've gone down, so they can be successful on their job. The best training is being trained or mentored by someone who has done it and someone who doesn't want anything from you. So that trust factor is there. I think it's tremendous. I'm not surprised by Antonio. There's people don't know Antonio because he looks flashy. They would think that, oh, he'd be a guy that would be in trouble, but no. He doesn't drink. Antonio Brown doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. Now, he had the Facebook stuff, but he's a great guy, takes care of his body. I would argue if there's someone in better shape than him in the NFL, I would argue with you about that.
So I'm going to tell a story that I don't know if I have a license to tell, but I'm going to tell it anyway. It's from one of the very first times you and I had spent a lot of time together. It was the Super Bowl in Houston, so 2 Super Bowls ago. It was right after Antonio had done the Facebook Live. Right? That was the playoffs where Antonio does the Facebook Live. CC and I are getting ready to either go on a show or do something, I'm not sure. And Antonio is walking through Radio Row. And CC puts the microphone down, runs over to him, says something to him, comes back over. And I asked him, I was like, what was that about? He's like, I told him to call me. Like, I told him to call me. He's got a lot going on, all this talent, and he maybe needs a little maintenance. And so when I saw now that, because Antonio really, aside, I know he had the one sideline blow up, but like that stuff you guys know doesn't bother me that much. He's stayed out of the negative spotlight in large part since then. And to see him now taking on that type of mentorship or leadership role for a guy that's not even a teammate of his. Just a guy he thinks, listen, drafted in a similar position as me, similar size as me, by the way, maybe some similar skill sets. Not saying this guy's going to be Antonio Brown. To take him under his wing like that, I think it's great. I think it's awesome, and it made me think of when you reached out to him, which is something you didn't have to do.
Yeah, it's part of the thing we talked about. We talked about Ben. You know, what's he going to do with the backup quarterbacks there? But it's a part of the league that's very, very important. If we're going to keep playing football, if football is going to be the American pastime and pro football, then we're going to have guys being mentored, because it doesn't make sense for us to have made mistakes and for us to keep our mistakes to ourselves compared to sharing them and give these kids the potential to be able to live out their potential, because that's what this is about. And the more information that he can get, the more he'll be equipped to be successful at his job.
Just real quick, one question about Callaway, not the Brown part of this. For Antonio Callaway, he missed a year of college football in part because of credit card. He got cited for a credit card violation, stolen credit card, but also marijuana possession. And then you test positive at the combine for a diluted sample, theoretically because of marijuana. He seems to have an issue with that. Some guys can handle that. He seems to have an issue with that. What advice would you give him, Antonio Callaway, not football, but related to that?
Listen to the guys around you. Between Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon's going to be on the team with him, he's got to listen to him. And he's got to be able to give it up if you want to play in the league. You can smoke the rest of your life. But if he wants to play in the NFL, he's not going to be able to smoke. It's just an easy decision.
Okay.
All right. Big story yesterday out of the NFL. Jason Witten retiring. Coming up, does Witten's retirement impact Dak Prescott? Next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Super Bowl champ, friend of the television program, and gigantic Kentucky Derby fan, Chris Canty.
Seersucker suit. You got the horse and jockey pin on.
Who are you rooting for tomorrow,
sure.
by the way, Chris Canny?
Oh, I got my favorites, Jenna. I got we got Magnum Moon, we got Good Magic, and we have Audible. So those are the 3 horses I'm going to put in my trifecta box.
All right, go and put your leg up here. Go and put your leg. This is one of my favorites. So I'm down with Gucci. Okay, I'm down with Gucci. I'm down with a big man who likes to be clean.
Yeah, that's not the Bow Wow challenge. They're actually real Gucci.
Not Canal Street.
Not the Bow Wow challenge.
Yeah, that's real Gucci. Just so everyone knows.
Not from Canal Street.
There we go.
Easy.
No, not going to do it.
Well, it's good to have you back. We missed you, Chris Canny. Let's dive right in. Yesterday, Jason Witten announced his retirement from the NFL after 15 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. The 11-time Pro Bowler will be calling Monday Night Football games next season. Friends and former teammates gathered to say goodbye to the Cowboy legend yesterday. Here was Jason Witten.
After much self-reflection, prayer, and faith, today I've decided that his time has come for me to pass the torch to the next generation of Dallas Cowboys and retire from the National Football League. I was never the most talented, never the flashiest. I relied on grit. Other players might have been more talented, but I can assure you, no one was going to outwork me.
You felt it there. It's hard walking away. I mean, it's easy when someone's like named Monday Night Football. It's like, come be with me. I will take care of you.
It's easy to leave a job when
right?
you know you got another job
It's the same
lined
with
up.
breaking up with people, right? Easy to break up
and with
with
the
someone
next job,
when
other
you
people
got
aren't trying to hit you.
Also that, what you said. Is Dak Prescott, Chris Canny, is Prescott set up to succeed in his 3rd season without Witten and without Des Bryant?
Well, here's the thing. I think the Dallas Cowboys have a way to be able to manufacture yards in the passing game. It's just not going to look like a traditional offense when we talk about how they're going to have to move the ball with the quarterback, Dak Prescott. I still don't think Dak has evolved to a volume passer from the pocket, but what I will say is with the guys that they acquired this offseason, Tavon Austin to go along with Cole Beasley, I think that they can put small guys in space in the short passing game, give them opportunities to make defenders miss, continue to move the chains that way. Short passes to be an extension of your running game because you don't have a vertical threat downfield. So you look at Allen Hurns, you look at Terrence Williams, the kid that they drafted, Michael Gallup, in the 3rd round. I just don't see a guy that's going to take the top off of the defense. So in order to keep defenses honest, what they're going to have to do is play small ball and use the width of the field in their passing game and allow that to create space in the box for Ezekiel Elliott to get the run game going.
Listen, I know we're making this about Dak, and understandably so, but the Cowboys' offense is going to, especially with the departures, revolve around Zeke even more so than it has. And my big question is, because listen, what Jason Witten said is correct. He wasn't the flashiest. I thought it was funny. He said, I did it on grit. But he was a very good, even in year 15, run-blocking tight end. Like, he was very good at that. And are you going to trust a rookie tight end to be able to do that? Are you going to trust Jeff Swaim to be able to do that? When we know teams, even when you had Des Bryant out there, were putting 8 men in the box, they're particularly going to do it if Allen Hurns is your most vertical threat as a wide receiver. How much is that departure going to hurt what the Cowboys do best, which is maul you up front? I know their offensive lineman will still be there, and Tyron Smith should be healthier than last year, but that to me is going to be harder to replace than 560 yards and 5 touchdowns in the passing game that Jason Witten is going to leave behind. Like, that to me is a big part of this as well.
It is not the perfect setup for a guy going into his 3rd year. Let's go with Jared Goff, and he's going into year 3, but looks how he struggled in year number 1. And what they did from an offensive coordinator standpoint, the athletes that they put around them, they went out and got a left tackle from Cincinnati. They put more talent. This is I say 99% of the players in the NFL are system players. Man, you need a good system, but you need some talent too.
Yeah.
Like, say, what would you rather have? A good system or talent? Give me the talent. All right? Now, I need a system. Yes, I'll acquiesce to that. Yeah, we need but, man, you need talented players. And they have talented players in the box. They have a talented tailback in the backfield. They do not have as much talent outside. So who does it affect the most? It affects the quarterback. So I expect Dak, the responsibility that will be put on his shoulder will be the most that he's seen since he's been in pro football. He's got less weapons. He's got less people that can do something with a mistake. Younger players make mistakes with the football. Great players erase the mistakes that quarterbacks are able to make, and they don't have that when they don't have Witten and they don't have Dez.
CC, you're absolutely right. A lot of coaches use the adage, it ain't about the X's and O's, it's about the Jessies and Joes. And when you look at the receiving core, they just don't have enough guys that can make plays in and of themselves. So, again, I go back to the system that Scott Linehan is going to have to run with Dak Prescott. It's probably going to look a lot more like what he did at Mississippi State under Dan Mullins in terms of spreading the ball out and making sure that you have that dink and dunk passing game to complement the run game. Because, listen, everybody knows that the only way the Dallas Cowboys can beat you based on their personnel is by running the football. So you're going to get a lot of 7- and 8-man box looks from the defense. You got to have a way to offset that, or at least keep the defense from wanting to get in those looks. And I think the short passing game with those little quick guys is what's going to make the difference.
And
that's the equalizer.
I mean, Chris makes good points. And right now, they cannot throw the ball over top of the defense. They can't. They got a great offensive line. Dak would have enough time, but they don't have the type of weapons. And I just believe Tavon Austin is not an addition to your wide receiver core.
He's a running back.
Yeah, he's an addition to what you're trying to do, sideline to sideline. He's an addition to your backfield, trying to get him out of the backfield, getting him in a mismatch on a linebacker or on a safety. So defensive coordinators in the NFL, they're going to dare the Dallas Cowboys to throw the football.
The Cowboys were so quick to move on from Dez Bryant as if they knew Allen Hurns was their answer. If they knew, they said, we're going to be fine with Allen Hurns, because not that there's that much to do. They didn't do that much in the draft. There's not that much as far as free agency is concerned, at least the rest of the way. They seem to be okay with what Dak has.
Well, I think they moved on from Dez because of some of the issues that were coming up in the locker room. I think that was more about team chemistry than a lack of production. Now, having a $16 million cap number didn't help Dez Bryant, and that was probably the catalyst in his departure.
But they didn't even ask him for less money.
They didn't ask him to restructure, and I think that's because there were players and coaches that wanted to move on from Dez Bryant. But when you consider that, along with the Jason Witten retirement, that's 132 catches that you had last year. The ball is going to have to go somewhere. It's got to go somewhere.
It's over half of Dak's career pass attempts to those two guys. 430 times he's targeted those two guys. I want to say one thing about what the Cowboys did in the draft. The Cowboys 6 years ago, at this point 6 years ago, I think did a smart thing. Removed the draft from fully being in Jerry's hands. Let Stephen Jones have more influence. Let their actual, and I don't want to say analytics, but their scouts and their smart people have more influence as far as, let's build this team up front. Let's spend high draft pick after high draft pick on the offensive line. And that has worked out really well for them. I wonder if in this draft, if they stayed true to that, a draft too long. Like, I'm not saying Leighton Vander Esch out of Boise isn't going to be a really good player as an inside linebacker, and I get it. With Sean Lee being as injured as he has been in his career, you get it. And Connor Williams, I thought he was a player who could go at the end of the first round. They got him in the middle of the second round. I understand the value there as well. But at some point, you do need some dynamic talent. At some point, you do need somebody who can go and scare a defense. And I get it that they were like, this is what we've done. This has been successful for us. But when you're sitting there at number 19 and you can take Calvin Ridley, and you can, even if you think his upside because he's 23 isn't as high, Calvin Ridley, to me, could walk in and, if he's the player I believe he'll be, by midseason, be their best receiving option.
The biggest problem with Calvin Ridley is he's not an X receiver. He's not a boundary receiver. He's a Z receiver, got to play to the field, and they got enough guys. And he's not a burner. You know, they got guys like that can run fast. Terrence Williams can run as fast as him, and he has the seasoning, and he is the typical Z receiver. So not necessarily a fit to what Dallas is trying to do.
But Dallas got jumped in the second round by the Philadelphia Eagles when they were targeting Dallas Goedert. So that was somebody that they were looking to, especially after the news came out Thursday night, Friday morning, that Jason Witten was considering retirement. So they thought they had a plan going into the draft to be able to replace that production from Witten. But now you look at the tight end position for the Dallas Cowboys, and you got a bunch of guys. So they've got to figure out through scheme how to offset those two losses, Dez Bryant and Jason Witten.
Sidebar, too, that wasn't supposed to be leaked out there. The people Jason Witten working for, might have let that information go, and it didn't help his situation.
That shouldn't be forgotten. like, listen, Jason Witten went to go work for ESPN. They obviously also have a news gathering arm of that. So that gets leaked out. I fully believe Philadelphia doesn't trade up in front of Dallas to go get that player if they don't have reason to believe Dallas needs a tight end. Yep. Right? So that wasn't the plan. It's not like it was leaked out to screw the Cowboys. But the end result was they might have missed out on a player they otherwise would have gotten if that information doesn't leak.
A player's whose name is?
Dallas. You love
Dallas.
it.
Hope he plays really well this year. Just so I can keep talking about it.
He better be good with that name in Philly.
I'm telling you.
Stick around. Don't go anywhere. Coming up, Matt Ryan got paid. But how much? Oh, all of it. That's how much. That's next on First Things First. Back here at First Things First with Chris Canny. And, man, it's a good day to be Matt Ryan. I mean, that is if money, job security, and fame are things you're into. The 2016 MVP quarterback signed a 5-year, $150 million contract extension with the Atlanta Falcons yesterday. However, only $100 million of that is guaranteed. Such a shame and a pity.
They lowballed him.
Poor house. Chris, are the Falcons a legit contender in the NFC? First of all, what'd you think of the deal?
I love the deal for Matt Ryan. I want all these guys to get paid because CC knows it's so hard to get that contract. But when you start looking at the quarterback position, there's a premium placed on that position, and rightfully so, because if you solve the riddle of who's going to be your quarterback for the foreseeable future, you're halfway home to being a consistently competitive team. And so Matt Ryan has done that since he was drafted in 2008. The Falcons have made the playoffs 6 out of the 10 seasons he's been there. So the fact that they went ahead and got this deal done this offseason going into this season, I think this puts them in a really good place. They drafted Calvin Ridley in the first round after he fell to them to replace some of that production they got from Taylor Gabriel in the slot. I think it's a complement of good receivers that they have with Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu. So I like how this team is setting up everything on the offensive side of the ball for Matt Ryan. There's no excuse why this team shouldn't be in position to compete for a division and ultimately compete for a championship.
Listen, I'm always happy when guys get paid. From a team perspective, I don't always necessarily think it's the right move. When Matt Stafford got his deal, I don't think Matt Stafford is good enough to take up that percentage salary cap and be able to win a championship. I think Matt Ryan is. I think Matt Ryan is absolutely a quarterback. Whatever the number is to keep Matt Ryan, when you have Matt Ryan, you pay him. And so if they did this a year ago, the number instead of being 5 years 150 probably would have been 5 years 135. And next year for the next one or for Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be even more. But this is, if you have a guy that you can win a Super Bowl with, and by the way, we know you can win a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan, even though they haven't won one. They were up 28-3 in the Super Bowl. In a year, they had one of the 8 most prolific offenses in NFL history. We know he's good enough.
Yep.
We know that the talent around him with Julio Jones is good enough. So, of course, you do this. And as the cap continues to go up, it won't be as onerous as it sounds right now at $30 million a year. It's still a huge number, biggest number in the league, but you got no choice. When you draft a quarterback in the top 5 like you did with Matt Ryan, the hope is he turns into Matt Ryan or better, and if that happens, you keep him. So the Falcons did what they had to do here. Can they contend in the NFC? They sure as hell should be able to. Yeah. NFC is the tougher of the two conferences, but the Falcons are one of the teams, I think they're in the toughest division in football. Could they win it? Sure. Could they finish third? But that could put them in the playoffs in third place, like it did for the Panthers last year. So I'm with it.
Yeah, they're definitely a contender. Matty Ice has deserved this type of contract. The Falcons did a great job as an organization. They just built a new stadium. They got the Super Bowl coming there this year. A lot of positive things around it. Love their coaching staff. Their front office has kind of stabilized. So, this is reflective of the business of the National Football League. And Nick and I have these discussions about the quarterback, and with the cap being over $170 million, you can spend $25 to $30 million on a quarterback, regardless of what the rating you think they are. If you're trying to get a quarterback and you're not going to spend $25 million, you're going to get what you pay for. All right, so Nick can have his theory about that. The cap is high enough now that it's not disproportionate to pay a guy over $20 million to be your quarterback. And if you're trying to have a Super Bowl and you don't have one, you don't have no Super Bowl aspirations.
Let me ask just one quick follow-up on this. When we talk about the Patriots, we talk about how when Brady makes $14 million, that's the ceiling that any other player can make. It's a couple million beneath that. When we look at this from a more global perspective, when quarterbacks are now making $30 million, does that mean, what does it mean for other positions? Wide receivers, are they now when Odell talks about $20 million a year, is that now something that actually is more realistic because the quarterback number is so high?
Yeah, Odell's no different. Inflation. Antonio got $17 million. All right. The cap has gone up. The next guy, just like Antonio went over Julio went over Larry Fitzgerald. Yes, the next thing is Odell. It's easy to see a guy getting $20 million now. And a defensive player, a defensive end.
Aaron Donald.
Yes, like
that contract.
Absolutely. So it reflects the economics of it all. Because you're like, okay, your theory about Matt Ryan, I wouldn't pay him that money. Well,
Matt Stafford.
Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
I can give you a theory. Man, I wouldn't pay a wide receiver $20 million.
Yeah.
Because that would eat up the cap. Like, that argument is stronger for wide receivers. It reflects the business of the league. Everyone from Roger Goodell to all the owners, now into the players, they're benefiting from labor success, the TV contract, and it's reflected in a guy getting $150 million. He deserved that contract.
No, he absolutely did deserve that contract. And to your point, these contracts are going to start to bump up with the salary cap moving up. But I think the increase at the quarterback position is going to be disproportionate to the other positions just because it's so important and they're so hard to find. You got pretty much a 50% bust rate of quarterbacks taken in the first round. But we just saw 4 teams take quarterbacks in the top 10 of this year's draft. 3 of those teams moved up to get those quarterbacks. So I think that shows you how valuable the position is,
of course,
in the NFL in today's game based on how they play today's game.
Okay, so here's the list right now. Kirk Cousins had the previous record for annual salary, $28 million. Jimmy Garoppolo, $27.5 million. Matthew Stafford is $27 million. You have to wonder, what does this mean for Aaron Rodgers now? What kind of pay scale can he command when this is the kind of money that's going out for those 3 guys? I don't know what you think of Kirk Cousins, Jimmy G, who has yet to really prove himself, and Matthew Stafford on that line, Steve.
Well, here's the thing. When a quarterback is about to get to the open market, they have the ultimate leverage. So those quarterbacks were scheduled to be free agents this offseason, and if they would actually get to the open market, they would command more money than their current contracts. So, I mean, when you look at Kirk Cousins' situation, it doesn't often happen when you see a quarterback get franchised twice and a team decide not to give him a long-term contract extension, but he happened to be the outlier, and that's why he got the 3-year, $84 million contract fully guaranteed. But as far as Aaron Rodgers is concerned, yeah, he's going to get paid a lot of money. If Matt Ryan got $30 million a year, I mean, it's not outside of the realm of possibility for A-Rod to get $33 million a year on a contract extension. I could see that happening. And when the general manager of the Packers came out earlier this week and said, we're going to get a contract extension done for Aaron Rodgers sooner rather than later, I think this deal was the first domino to fall in terms of being able to set the framework for that contract.
Yeah, if I was Aaron Rodgers, though, I wouldn't be concerned with being the highest paid guy. Aaron Rodgers' legacy is going to be based on championships. Y'all can brag about it. Oh, Aaron got $35 million. If Aaron don't win no more championships, his legacy not going to change. So I wouldn't be. They're cash flow positive. They're the only publicly owned team. Aaron Rodgers can ask for whatever he wants to, but it's more important that he participates in free agency. If I was Aaron Rodgers, that's what I would be talking to the organization about. Man, spread this money around, man. Get me some weapons. I've only got so many years left to play.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up on that? When you say it's more, for Aaron Rodgers, it's less about money, more about championships, is that the standard you hold him to because of how great he is? That a guy, Matt Ryan's an awesome player. We don't talk about Matt Ryan the way we talk about Aaron Rodgers. So Matt Ryan, go out, get all the money you can. But when you're talking about a legacy, like I don't think about Matt Ryan's legacy. You're talking about legacy is attached to great players. So is that why you do that with Aaron Rodgers? Because he's about where he is as all-time quarterbacks, things like that?
Well, he's playing in the era where Tom Brady has 5 Super Bowls. I mean, what's Aaron Rodgers going to say? I left my career, I left Green Bay, I got, 1 Super Bowl? That's going to be his legacy? I wouldn't be concerned about the money. He's making plenty of money. His legacy's based on the field. They can't get any better players. He's going to be stuck winning 1 Super Bowl.
Chris, thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.